He looked at her across the table, in front of the nurses, the other doctors, everyone who worked with her, and said it loud enough that the whole room went quiet. "You were never part of my life. You were a mistake I tolerated." Claire Whitmore didn't cry. She didn't throw anything. She just stood up, picked up her coffee cup, and walked out the door. 41 days later, her father was dead. And 3 weeks after that, she found the envelope. That envelope broke everything she thought she knew. About her father, about the quiet life he lived, about the danger he had been carrying alone for years. If you were holding that USB drive right now, knowing that somewhere out there, people had already killed for it, what would you do? Stay with us until the end of this story. If it moves you, hit that like button and drop a comment telling us what city or country you're watching from. We read every single one, and we want to see how far this story travels. The morning her father died, Claire Whitmore was on hour 11 of a 14-hour shift. She was standing in the hallway of Millfield Community Clinic in Denton, Ohio, a town of roughly 12,000 people where almost everyone knew everyone, and where the emergency cases were usually farm equipment accidents or elderly patients who had waited too long to call anyone. She had a chart in one hand and a cold cup of coffee in the other, and she was trying to remember whether she had eaten anything since 6 that morning when her phone buzzed. The number was her father's landline. She almost didn't answer. She and Richard Whitmore had not been speaking easily for the past few months, not because of any dramatic falling out, but because of the way things sometimes grow quiet between people who love each other and don't know how to say so. She had been busy. He had been alone in that house since her mother passed 4 years before. The silences between their phone calls had been getting longer, and neither of them had done anything about it. She answered. It wasn't her father. It was his neighbor, Don Mercer, a retired plumber who lived 2 houses down and had known Richard for 30 years. Don's voice was careful, the way voices get when someone is trying not to say a terrible thing directly. "Claire," he said, "honey, I think you need to come home." Richard Whitmore was 68 years old. He had been in reasonable health, a little high blood pressure, the kind of stiff back that came from decades of sitting at an accountant's desk. He walked the same 2-mile loop around his neighborhood every morning at 7. He was not the kind of man you expected to find collapsed in his garage on a Tuesday. But that was where Don found him, face down on the concrete, his hand still wrapped around the handle of a socket wrench, like whatever stopped his heart had come on him so fast he hadn't had time to let go. The county coroner ruled it cardiac arrest. Quick. Probably painless. Claire stood in her father's kitchen 2 days later, still in the clothes she had driven 5 hours in, and nodded at everything the coroner's assistant told her, because nodding felt like the only thing her body knew how to do. She did not cry until she was alone in his bedroom, sitting on the edge of his bed with his cardigan in her lap, pressing her face into the wool and breathing the particular smell of him, Old Spice, and the particular cold weather staleness of a house where a single person lived. And then she cried until she thought something in her chest might actually break. Maisie was with her, 7 years old, small for her age, with Richard's gray-green eyes and a habit of chewing the ends of her hair when she was anxious. She stood in the doorway of her grandfather's bedroom and watched her mother cry, and then she came over without saying anything and pressed her small body against Claire's side. They sat like that for a long time. That was the worst of it, at first. The grief was enormous but ordinary, the kind that comes for everyone eventually. Claire took 2 weeks off from the clinic. She sorted through her father's paperwork, called his insurance company, made the arrangements. She sold his car to a man from the next town over who paid in cash and asked no questions. She was practical about most of it, the way she had learned to be practical about things that hurt. She did not go into the garage for the first 10 days. It was a small garage, 1 car, a workbench along the far wall, pegboard with tools hung in the outlines her father had traced around each one, so he always knew where to put them back. He had been a methodical man, the kind who kept receipts sorted by year in labeled folders, who changed the furnace filters on the 1st of every month and wrote it down in a notebook. Being inside his garage felt like being inside his mind, orderly, slightly spare, precise. Claire was looking for his winter tools. Snow shovel, ice melt, things she would need to bring back to Denton since she had none of her own. She was crouched down, checking the lower shelf of the workbench, when her knuckles knocked against something wedged into the gap between the bottom shelf and the backboard. She thought it was a rag at first, something he'd shoved back there and forgotten. She pulled it out. It was an envelope. water stained around the edges, sealed with the kind of tape that had dried and gone brittle. Her name was written on the front in her father's handwriting. Not his normal handwriting, not the careful block letters he used for labels and lists. This was rushed, the kind of writing that comes when someone's hand isn't quite steady. Claire sat down on the cold garage floor. She did not open it right away. She sat there holding it in both hands, looking at her name in that shaky script, and felt something cold move through her that had nothing to do with the temperature. Inside was a USB drive, black, unremarkable, the kind you could buy in a gas station 20-pack, and a handwritten note on a single sheet of paper, folded in thirds. She unfolded it. "If you are reading this, I am already gone. Do not go to the police. Find Vincent Blackwood. He will know what to do. Whatever happens, never let them know you have this." She read it 3 times. Then she sat there in her dead father's garage for a very long time, turning the USB drive over and over in her fingers, listening to the wind move along the outside of the house. Vincent Blackwood. She had not heard that name in over a decade. She had not let herself think about it, the same way you don't let yourself think about certain rooms in a house that unsettle you. 11 years ago, she had been 26. Home from her residency for Thanksgiving, tired and overworked and glad to be somewhere that smelled like her mother's cooking. Her father had invited a guest, unusual because Richard Whitmore did not often invite people he knew from work to family dinners. He had introduced the man simply as an old associate. Vincent. He was not a warm person. He was tall and dark-suited, and he sat at the end of the table with the particular stillness of someone who was always watching the exits. He didn't make small talk. He didn't compliment the food. He answered direct questions with short answers and asked none of his own. Claire's mother, a woman who could pull conversation out of a stone wall, had faltered twice trying to engage him and finally given up. Claire had caught him watching her once when she was passing the breadbasket. Not the way men sometimes looked at young women. Something else. Assessing. The way you looked at a situation you were calculating. She had thought, whoever this man is, he is not safe. Whatever he does for a living, it isn't what my father said it was. She had forgotten about him. Life had moved on. Residency, the clinic, marriage, Maisie, divorce. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, the memory of a strange, quiet man at a Thanksgiving dinner had faded to almost nothing. Now she was sitting in a garage holding a note that told her to find him. She drove back to Denton the next morning. Maisie slept the whole way, curled in the back seat with her jacket pulled over her shoulders like a blanket. Claire drove with both hands on the wheel and the USB drive in her jacket pocket, and her father's note folded inside her wallet, and she told herself she was going to think this through carefully before she did anything. She was not careful. She was afraid. She spent 3 days at home, going through the ordinary motions, opening the clinic, doing her rounds, making Maisie's lunches, helping with homework. She did everything the same as always. She smiled at the right moments. She answered questions. From the outside, she looked like a woman grieving quietly, which is exactly what she wanted people to see. At night, she sat at her kitchen table with her laptop and searched for Vincent Blackwood. There was not much. A name in an archived business directory, associated with a holdings company in New York that no longer seemed to be operating. A single photograph, short, blurry, taken from a distance, attached to a news article about a federal investigation that had been dropped 8 years ago due to insufficient evidence. The article didn't name him directly. He was referred to as an associate of the firm. Claire stared at the photograph for a long time. Older than the man she remembered, silver coming in at his temples. Same stillness, even caught in a photograph, even blurry. Like the camera itself had been uncertain about capturing him. She found a contact number buried in an old business registration that still appeared in a cached document. She didn't know if it still worked. She wrote it on a piece of paper and held it in her hand for an hour before she picked up her phone. She typed the number in. Did not save it as a contact, stared at it. Then she typed a message. My father was Richard Whitmore. He left something behind with your name on it. I need to understand what I'm holding. She pressed send. Then she put the phone face down on the table and went to check on Maisie, because doing anything at all felt better than sitting still. The reply came 40 minutes later. 2 words. I know. Claire read it standing in the hallway outside Maisie's room. She read it 3 times. Then she went into the bathroom and ran the cold water over her wrists because her hands were shaking. He knew. He already knew. He knew her father was dead, and he knew she had found something, and those two words told her that whatever her father had been involved in, it was not over. It had not ended in that garage with a man falling to a concrete floor with a socket wrench in his hand. It was still going. She went back to the kitchen. She sat down. She typed back, "Then you know why I'm reaching out." A longer pause this time. 12 minutes. "Where are you?" She thought about the fact that she was not supposed to trust this man, that her father's note said find him, not trust him, that those were different things. She typed, "Why?" No reply for 23 minutes. She counted. She was not proud of how closely she counted. Then, "Because they will look for what your father left behind. They are already looking. You need to understand that before you do anything else." She sat with that for a moment. Then she typed, "Come find me yourself. If you know who I am, you know where I am." She expected him not to answer. She expected him to push back, to ask for an address, to negotiate. She was a woman who had spent years in emergency medicine learning to read situations quickly, and she had assessed this one as something she needed to approach with both hands, visible and no sudden movements. 2 days later, at 7:15 in the morning, there was a knock at her front door. She was standing in her kitchen in her hospital clothes, already running late, with Maisie's backpack half-packed on the counter and a piece of toast going cold in the toaster. When she opened the door, she had a travel mug in one hand and was already forming the words for whoever it was. The mail, a neighbor, something ordinary. It was not ordinary. Vincent Blackwood was taller than she remembered. Or maybe she had shrunk the memory of him over the years, the way we sometimes make threatening things smaller in our minds so we can get through the days. He was wearing a dark coat, his hands in his pockets, and he was looking at her with the same flat, calculating expression she remembered from her mother's dinner table. He was older. The silver she had seen in the photograph was real. It ran through his dark hair at the temples and threaded through a jaw that hadn't been shaved in a few days. There were lines in his face that hadn't been there 11 years ago. The kind of lines that come from things that happened, not just time passing. He said nothing. He just looked at her. "You didn't have my address," she said. Her voice was steadier than she expected. "No," he said. "So how—" "Your father gave it to me," he said. "A long time ago. In case something happened." She stared at him. "He planned for this," she said. It wasn't a question, but Vincent answered it like one. "Your father was the most careful man I ever knew," he said. "He planned for everything." Behind her, Maisie's voice came from the hallway. "Mom, who is it?" Claire turned without stepping back from the door. "Go get your backpack, baby. We're leaving in 5 minutes." She heard Maisie's footsteps retreat. She turned back to Vincent. "I need to get my daughter to school," she said. "I know." "And then," she said, "you are going to come back here and you are going to tell me everything, not some of it, everything." Vincent looked at her for a moment, that same measuring, deliberate look, and something shifted in it that she couldn't quite name. Not softness. Nothing that simple. Something more like recognition. "Your father said you'd be like this," he said. "Like what?" "Like someone who didn't scare easy." She held the door open. "Be here at 9. Don't make me wait." She closed the door before he could answer. Her hands were shaking again when she went back to the kitchen. She picked up the cold toast and threw it in the trash because she couldn't imagine eating it. She finished packing Maisie's backpack with practiced mechanical movements. Snack, water bottle, folder, permission slip she kept forgetting to sign. She had told a man who she strongly suspected was a career criminal to show up at her house at 9 o'clock in the morning. She had done it because her father had trusted him. Because her father, the most careful man she had ever known, had written his name on a piece of paper and hidden it in a garage and said find him, not run, not go to the police, not protect yourself. Find this man. She drove Maisie to school on autopilot. Maisie talked about something that happened at recess the day before. A dispute over a jump rope that had escalated to what Maisie described with great seriousness as a whole situation. Claire nodded and asked questions in the right places, and kept both hands on the wheel and did not think about the USB drive sitting in the inside pocket of her work bag. She kissed Maisie at the door of the school. Maisie hugged her tight around the waist, tighter than usual, and then ran off without looking back because that was how Maisie always left places she loved. Fast, committed, not looking back. Like she wasn't afraid. Claire watched until she was through the door. Then she drove back home and sat in her driveway and waited for 9 o'clock. At 9:02, a black car she didn't recognize pulled up to the curb. Vincent Blackwood got out alone. He came up the walk the same way he'd stood at the door, unhurried, with that particular quality of stillness that said the world moved around him, not the other way around. Claire had put coffee on. She didn't know why. Something to do with her hands. She let him in. He stood in the middle of her kitchen and looked around it in a way that felt less like curiosity and more like cataloging. Exits, windows, angles. She noticed it. She didn't say anything about it. She poured 2 cups. She set one in front of him. She sat down across the table. "My father," she said, "was a retired accountant." "Yes," Vincent said. "That's what I was told." "That's true," he said. "That's what he was." "But," Claire said. "But," Vincent said, "for 8 years he also worked with me." The way he said it, the particular flatness of it, the complete absence of apology or softness, told her that this man was not going to protect her from anything. He was going to tell her the truth because that was what she had asked for, and he didn't see the point of doing anything else. She wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. "Tell me," she said. And he did. The man her father had been investigating was named Damien Crosswell. Claire knew the name vaguely, the kind of name you saw in the business section, attached to real estate developments and charity galas, and the particular kind of wealth that got its own magazine profiles. A billionaire, a philanthropist publicly, a man whose name was on 3 hospital wings and a university scholarship fund. Vincent laid it out without drama and without embellishment. Damien Crosswell's legitimate empire was the cover for something much older and much darker. Money laundering on a scale that most people couldn't imagine. Not a few million here and there, but billions. Moving through shell companies and real estate deals and construction projects so complicated, it took a forensic accountant 8 years to trace it. That forensic accountant was Richard Whitmore. "He came to me," Vincent said. Not the other way around. He found the first thread. He knew what it connected to. He knew if he went to the police, Damien would know about it within 24 hours. "Because Damien has people in the police," Claire said. "In the police. In the prosecutor's office. In the federal system." Vincent said it without inflection, like he was reading from a document. "Your father was not a naive man. He knew where the safe places were and where they weren't. So he came to you." "He came to me." She looked at him across the table. "And what are you exactly? That you would be safer than the police?" The corner of Vincent's mouth moved. It wasn't quite a smile. "I'm someone Damien Crosswell is afraid of," he said. "And I have been, for a very long time." Claire thought about the photograph she had found, the dropped federal investigation, the company that no longer existed, the kind of paper trail that suggested a man who was very good at being difficult to look at directly. "My father trusted you," she said. "He trusted you enough to put your name on a piece of paper and hide it in his garage in case he died." "Yes." "Why?" Vincent was quiet for a moment, long enough that she thought he might not answer. "Because I kept my word to him," he said finally. "Every time I told him something would happen, it happened. Every time I told him he was protected, he was. For 8 years." He paused. "I didn't keep him alive. I failed at that. But everything else, everything I promised him, I kept." The kitchen was very quiet. Claire could hear the refrigerator humming, the sound of a car going slowly past outside. Ordinary sounds, the sounds of her ordinary life, and underneath them something she could feel more than hear, the awareness that the ordinary part was already over. "The USB drive," she said. "What's on it is everything he collected," Vincent said. 8 years of records, every transaction, every coded communication, every name. He looked at her steadily. "It's enough to bring down everything Damien built. Everything. But my father never delivered it. He died before our last meeting." She looked at him. "Did Damien kill him?" Vincent didn't look away. He didn't give her a softened version. He held her gaze and said nothing, which was the most truthful answer he could have given. The coffee cup felt very cold in her hand suddenly, though she hadn't noticed it cooling. "Then what happens now?" she said. "Now," Vincent said, "we finish what your father started." She looked at him across the table, this man who was feared by people she would never meet, This man who had sat at her mother's dinner table 11 years ago and watched the room like a soldier. And she thought about Maisie in school right now, probably arguing about jump ropes, completely unaware that her mother was sitting here making a decision that would change every day that came after this one. "There's one condition," Claire said. Vincent waited. "My daughter," she said. "Whatever happens next, whatever you're planning, whatever this costs, Maisie comes through it. You understand me? I don't care about anything else. My daughter comes through this safe." Vincent looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, "That was also your father's condition." She felt something crack open in the back of her throat. She didn't let it show. "Then we understand each other," she said. Outside, a cloud shifted. The light in the kitchen changed slightly, going from pale to something cooler and more serious, and Claire Whitmore sat across from a man the world was afraid of and felt, for the first time since she had found that envelope in the cold garage, something that was almost like clarity. Her father had not left her a burden. He had left her a fight. And he had left her, in his careful, precise, Richard Whitmore way, exactly the person she would need to fight it. Vincent did not leave right away. That was the first thing that surprised her. She had expected him to take the USB drive and go, to fold back into whatever world he came from, give her a phone number to call if something happened, and disappear. That was how she had imagined it in the 2 days between his first message and his arrival at her door. A brief, transactional meeting, an exchange of information. Two people who needed something from each other, getting it and separating. Instead, he sat at her kitchen table and drank his coffee and asked her questions. Not about the drive. Not about her father's note or the files or Damien Crosswell. He asked about the envelope. When exactly she found it, how it was sealed, whether she had moved it from its original position before opening it, whether anyone had been inside the garage between the time she arrived and the time she discovered it. He asked each question in the same flat, unhurried tone, and when she answered, he listened with a completeness that was almost uncomfortable, like he was recording everything behind those dark eyes, and nothing she said would be forgotten. "You moved it," he said. "I took it inside," she said. "Yes." "Where is it now?" "My bag." She nodded toward the canvas work bag hanging by the door. "The drive is in there too. Anyone in this house since you got back from your father's?" "Maisie, her babysitter, 2 afternoons. My colleague Petra dropped off food the first day." "Petra." "She's been my colleague for 6 years. She brought soup." "Did she come inside?" Claire looked at him. "She's not a spy, Vincent." "Did she come inside?" "Into the kitchen, for about 10 minutes. He nodded slowly, absorbing it. Then he looked at the bag by the door. "I need to see what's on the drive," he said. "I figured." "Here. Now. Not somewhere else." "It has a password," Claire said. "I already tried." Something moved across his face. Not surprise exactly, more like confirmation of something he'd already assumed. He reached into his coat pocket and set a small notebook on the table between them. The cover was worn smooth, the corners bent. It looked like it had been carried in that pocket for years. "Your father gave me the decryption key," he said, "in pieces, over time. I have the first half. The second half is on that drive, embedded in one of the files. The 2 parts have to be entered simultaneously." Claire stared at the notebook. "He didn't trust you with the whole thing," she said. "No," Vincent said, and his voice had something in it she hadn't expected, something that might have been respect, if respect could sound slightly like a bruise. "He didn't trust anyone with the whole thing, including me." She got the bag. She set the laptop on the table and plugged in the drive. She watched Vincent open the notebook and find the page he was looking for, covered in her father's handwriting, tight and cramped, the kind of notation that only made sense to the person who wrote it. "He always wrote like that," she said before she could stop herself. Like the words were trying to get away from him. Vincent looked at the page for a moment. He said writing it helped him think. "It did," she said. "He used to make lists of everything, grocery lists, task lists. He kept a journal for 30 years. "I know," Vincent said. She looked at him. "He told me about the journals," Vincent said, not elaborating, just stating. She thought about her father sitting at this man's table somewhere, she didn't even know where, talking about his private habit of writing things down. The strangeness of it caught in her chest. Her father had known this man well enough to talk about the journals. Well enough to trust him with half a decryption key. Well enough to write his name on a piece of paper and hide it in a garage. And he had never once mentioned him after that Thanksgiving dinner. "You're going to have to explain to me," she said carefully, "what exactly you are to each other. What you were." "Later," Vincent said. "Not later. Now, before I let you put anything into my laptop." He looked at her. The measuring look again. She was getting used to it, though it still put her teeth on edge. "Your father and I had an arrangement," he said. "He wanted to expose Damien Crosswell. I wanted Damien Crosswell exposed. We needed each other." "That's not what I asked." "I know." "What are you to each other?" she said again, slower this time, like she was giving him a chance to hear it properly. "Not professionally, as people." The pause was longer than any he had taken so far. He looked at the notebook in his hands. His thumb moved across the worn corner of the cover. "He was my friend," Vincent said. "The only one I had left." The kitchen was very quiet. Claire nodded once, slowly. Then she turned back to the laptop. "Show me the key," she said. It took 22 minutes. The first attempt failed, not because the key was wrong, but because the sequence had to be entered in a specific order that Vincent had written in a personal shorthand that he had to translate as he went. The second attempt got further and then stalled on the embedded half. The third attempt worked. The drive opened. Neither of them spoke for a moment. The file structure was enormous. Hundreds of documents, organized in her father's methodical way, labeled with codes that meant nothing to her at first glance, but clearly meant something to the man sitting beside her. She could feel Vincent's attention shift the moment the files appeared on screen. The particular stillness of him changed, became something denser, more focused, like a room when the air pressure drops before a storm. "This is more than he told me about," Vincent said quietly. "Is that good or bad?" He scrolled slowly through the file tree, not opening anything yet, just looking at the structure, at the sheer volume of it. "It's more than enough," he said. "It's more than anyone would need." "So we take it to the federal investigators," Claire said. "You have contacts. We don't move on this today." She looked at him. "Why not?" "Because opening this drive created a trace," he said. He said it without looking at her, still scrolling slowly. "Your father built in a notification protocol. It was his insurance, a way of proving the files existed and had been accessed, with a timestamp. It goes to a secure server." "That sounds like a good thing." "It is," he said. "And it isn't." He stopped scrolling. He looked at her. "Because Damien's people have been looking for this drive for 3 weeks. They know what your father had. They know he hid it somewhere. And if they have anyone monitoring traffic from that server, and there is a reasonable chance they do, they now know the drive has been accessed." Claire stared at him. "So by opening it," she said, "we just told them we have it." "Possibly," he said. "Not certainly, but possibly." The refrigerator hummed. The morning light through the kitchen window had gone flat and gray, the sky outside shifting towards something that looked like rain. "How long?" she said. "To confirm whether the trace was picked up? Hours, maybe less. And if it was picked up, then they will begin looking for the access point." She stood up. She walked to the window. She looked out at her ordinary street, the Hendersons' minivan parked crookedly in their driveway, the way it always was. The maple tree in front of number 42 that still had a broken branch from last winter's ice storm that nobody had dealt with yet. "Maisie gets out of school at 3:15, she said. "I know." She turned around. "Don't say that. Don't keep saying you know things about my life like it's supposed to make me feel better. It doesn't make me feel better." Vincent absorbed this without reaction. "I'm sorry," he said. It surprised her, the directness of it. No qualification, no explanation, just the 2 words. She turned back to the window. "I need to think." "You have some time. Not much." "How much?" "If the trace was picked up immediately, 4 hours. If it takes them longer to identify the access point, maybe 12. If we're fortunate and nothing was flagged, longer." "And what does your gut tell you?" A pause. "My gut tells me to assume 4. She thought of Maisie sitting in her second-grade classroom right now, working on something, completely unbothered. She thought of Richard's note. Whatever happens, never let them know you have this. They already knew, or they might. And in this situation, might was the same as yes. She turned around. "Call whoever you need to call. Tell them to watch the school." Vincent was already reaching for his phone. He made 2 calls, both brief. Both in a low voice she didn't try to follow. He used no names on his end, spoke in a tone that was neither warm nor cold, gave information in short bursts, and then listened. The second call lasted less than a minute. He put the phone in his pocket. "There are 2 people watching the school already," he said. "There were 2 people watching your house before I arrived this morning." She felt her stomach drop. "You put surveillance on me before I came to your door?" "Yes." "Without telling me." "Without telling you," he confirmed. She stood very still. She felt the anger come up in her throat, clean and hot and specific. "That's my life," she said. "My daughter's school. You don't get to make decisions about my life without—" "I made the decision your father would have made," Vincent said. His voice stayed even, but there was something underneath it that wasn't quite patience, something that had its own edge. "You had contacted me. You were holding evidence that Damien Crosswell has had people searching for since your father died. What would you have had me do?" "Ask me," she said. "You could have asked me." "And if I had asked you," he said, "and you had said no, and something had happened to your daughter in the time it took to persuade you, would that have been better?" She opened her mouth, closed it. He wasn't wrong. She hated that he wasn't wrong. "Next time," she said, "you ask." "Next time," he said, "I'll ask." It wasn't a concession. It was more like an acknowledgement that they were in territory now where both of them would have to adjust. She sat back down. She looked at the files still open on her laptop screen. "Tell me about Damien Crosswell," she said. "Not the legal case. Tell me what he's actually like." Vincent looked at her. "Why?" "Because I want to understand what my father spent 8 years fighting," she said. "And I want to understand why a man like you needed a retired accountant to do it." A long pause. Vincent reached for his coffee. Cold now, but he drank it like that was irrelevant. "Damien Crosswell," he said slowly, "is not a man who does his own violence. He never has been. In 30 years of criminal investigation, no one has ever connected him directly to a single act of violence. Everything goes through layers, contractors, intermediaries, people who work for people who work for people. He builds systems the same way he builds buildings. Foundation first, then the structure around it so you can't see the foundation anymore. But the violence is there. It's always there. My father—" "Your father," Vincent said, and he set the cup down, "was not supposed to look like what it was. A cardiac event in a man his age, with a history of mild hypertension. No one was going to question it, and they didn't." She breathed through that, in through the nose, out through the mouth, the way she had learned to breathe through things in emergency medicine when she needed to stay functional. "What was it, actually?" "We don't have proof yet," Vincent said. "That's part of what we're going to get." "What do you think it was?" He held her gaze. "I think your father was given something that accelerated a cardiac event that might have happened naturally in another 5 or 10 years. Something undetectable in a standard post-mortem, but detectable now. If we can get the right examiner involved, yes." She looked at the table. There was a small stain on the wood near the edge, coffee, from weeks ago, that she had wiped up but never fully removed. She looked at it because it was something solid and real and hers. "He was murdered," she said. The word felt like pressing on a bruise. "I believe so." "And you believe it because the meeting we had scheduled, the final handoff, when he was going to give me the full drive, was 3 days after he died." Vincent's voice stayed level, but something in his jaw tightened slightly. "The timing was not coincidental. Someone knew about that meeting." She looked up. "Someone who knew about the meeting?" "Yes." "Meaning someone in your circle?" The pause that followed was exactly 1 beat too long. "I have been considering that possibility," Vincent said. "Considering," she said. "You've known for 3 weeks and you've been considering. It takes time to identify." "There's a leak," she said. "On your side. Someone told Damien about the meeting, someone who knew when and where it was, and you have been sitting on that for 3 weeks. His expression didn't change, but something behind it did. Something that looked for the first time like discomfort. "I couldn't move on it until I knew you were safe and the drive was accounted for," he said. "Your father's priority was clear." "I don't care about his priority right now," she said, and her voice came out harder than she expected. I care about the fact that there's someone in your organization who helped kill my father, and you haven't dealt with it. I haven't identified them with certainty. But you have suspects. He looked at her for a long time. Yes, he said. Tell me. No. She stared at him. Excuse me? Not yet, he said. If I tell you and I'm wrong, you will have information that could get the wrong person hurt. If I tell you and I'm right, he stopped. Something moved through his face. If I'm right, the person I'm looking at is someone I have known for 11 years. I need to be certain before I say his name to anyone. She heard it then, underneath the flatness of his voice, underneath the control, something that wasn't purely strategic, something that cost him. Someone you trusted, she said. He didn't answer. She said, I'm sorry. He looked mildly startled, like that was not what he had expected. My father trusted you completely, she said. You trusted someone who may have gotten him killed. I understand why you need to be certain. He looked at her for a moment, and then away, out toward the gray window, the ordinary street, the ice storm branch that nobody had fixed. His name is Marcus Webb, he said quietly. He's been with me since the beginning. He was at the meeting where I told your father we were 6 months out from the final handoff. The name meant nothing to her, but the way Vincent said it meant everything. You've known for a while, she said. Haven't you? I've suspected for a while. How long? Since the day after your father died. She thought about that. 11 days. 11 days of Vincent Blackwood carrying this, knowing his most trusted person might have betrayed them both, and moving forward anyway. Putting surveillance on her school, approaching her carefully, sitting here at her kitchen table answering questions. What does Marcus know about me? She asked. That Richard had a daughter, your general location. He was not present for any discussion of the drive's specifics or the decryption key. But he knew about the final meeting. Yes. So he knows the drive exists. Yes. And if Damien's people picked up the trace from opening it, then Marcus will know the drive has been accessed, Vincent said. And he will tell Damien, and Damien will send people here. She pressed both hands flat on the table. She looked at them. The hands she used for medical work, steady under pressure, by years of training, currently not entirely steady. Then we need to move, she said. Yes. The drive needs to go to someone Damien can't reach, Vincent said. Someone inside the federal system who is not connected to any of the people Damien owns. You have someone like that. I have someone I believe is like that, he said. Belief and certainty are not the same thing in this situation. Who is it? An investigator. Her name is Sandra Holt. She has been building a parallel case against Damien for 4 years, independent of any local law enforcement, through a specific federal division that Damien's reach hasn't penetrated, as far as I can determine. How do you know her? She came to me, he said, 3 years ago. She had pieces of the picture. I had other pieces. We exchanged what we could without fully trusting each other. And you trust her now? I trust that she wants Damien in prison more than she wants anything else, he said. And I trust that she is smart enough to understand that moving without the complete evidence would mean he walks. She has too much invested to compromise it. Claire looked at the laptop screen, at the hundreds of files her father had spent 8 years building. When do we contact her? She said. Not yet, Vincent said. The moment I contact Sandra, the timeline accelerates. Once she has the drive, she moves. She has to. The evidence would compel it. And when she moves, Damien will know within... The phone in his pocket buzzed. He took it out, looked at the screen. Something changed in his face. A very small shift, but Claire was watching closely enough to catch it. A tightening around the eyes. The jaw. He answered. Yes. She watched him listen. He said nothing for 30 seconds. Then, where? Another pause. How many? A pause. Keep them there. Don't engage. He ended the call. He put the phone back in his pocket and stood up in one smooth motion, the chair pushing back quietly on the kitchen floor. We need to move now, he said. There are 2 vehicles that have been circling this street for the past 18 minutes. Claire was already on her feet. Maisie, my people are at the school. She's safe. She doesn't leave that building until I say so. He was already moving toward the window, not looking out of it directly, angling to the side, checking the street without being visible. You need to pack what you need. 10 minutes. Pack for how long? He looked at her. I don't know yet. That's not Claire. He said her name for the first time. The sound of it in his voice, flat, direct, but with an urgency underneath it, cut through her. 10 minutes. I'll explain everything I can in the car. Right now you need to move. She moved. She went upstairs and she pulled the go bag she kept for travel emergencies. A habit from residency, when she had learned to always have something ready. And she stuffed it with the essentials the way she had been taught to think about emergencies. Medication first, documents second, then clothing. She grabbed Maisie's small purple backpack from the closet and packed it without thinking too hard, knowing she had maybe 8 minutes, knowing that thinking too hard was the enemy of moving fast. She came downstairs. Vincent was on the phone again, 2 words in, a pause, 2 more words. He saw her and nodded once. She picked up her laptop and unplugged the drive and put it in her work bag, and then she thought about something and went back to the kitchen and took a photograph of her father's note, the one she kept in her wallet, because she had not copied it yet and she did not want to lose it. Her father's handwriting on her phone screen. Find Vincent Blackwood. He will know what to do. She put the phone in her pocket. Ready, she said. Vincent looked at her. The 2 bags on her shoulder, the steadiness in her face that was costing her more than he could see. Your father was right about you, he said. Don't, she said. He nodded. He moved toward the back of the house. The car is 2 streets over. We go through the yard. They went through the yard. The grass was wet from the morning and the sky was fully gray now, the kind of flat Ohio cloud cover that turned everything the same color. Claire's shoes were not made for moving through wet grass, but she moved through it anyway, following Vincent's pace, unhurried enough not to look like flight, fast enough to cover ground. At the back fence he paused, checked something on his phone, looked left along the alley behind the houses. Clear, he said, and held the gate. She went through. Halfway down the alley, her own phone buzzed. She looked at it without slowing. A text from a number she didn't recognize. We know what you're carrying, Dr. Whitmore. Leave it outside your front door and go back inside. This doesn't have to touch your daughter. She stopped walking. Vincent stopped 2 steps ahead of her. He turned. He saw the look on her face and held out his hand without asking. She gave him the phone. He read the message. His expression did not change. But something about the way he handed the phone back to her was different. A particular careful control, like a man setting down something very heavy so he didn't break the floor. They're trying to separate you from the drive, he said. I know, she said. I know what they're doing. Do you want to stop? He said. And for the first time since he'd appeared at her door, his voice was completely direct. No flatness, no strategy, just a question asked at the level where questions actually live. You can still hand me the drive and walk away. Take Maisie and go somewhere. I will finish. Don't, she said. Claire, they threatened my daughter, she said. This doesn't have to touch your daughter. She said it quietly, not as a question, as a statement about what she had just decided. It already touched my daughter. The moment they wrote that sentence, it was already too late to walk away. Vincent looked at her for a moment. Then he turned and kept walking. She followed. The car was a dark gray sedan, unremarkable, parked behind a hardware store on Callaway Street. The man behind the wheel was broad-shouldered and said nothing when they got in, just started the engine and pulled out smoothly, like this was a routine pickup. Where are we going? Claire said. Somewhere they won't expect, Vincent said. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have right now. He was looking at his phone, reading something. His thumb moved across the screen. We have a 2-hour window before Marcus would be able to confirm the trace back to your address, if I'm right about him. And if you're wrong about Marcus, then someone else told them, which means the problem is bigger. He looked up from the phone. Which means we move faster. She held her work bag against her chest. Inside it, the drive. Inside the drive, 8 years of her father's careful, solitary work. The car turned onto the highway and accelerated into the flat gray distance of the Ohio morning, and Claire Whitmore looked out the window at the passing ordinary world, gas stations, billboards, the particular bleakness of a Midwestern highway in November, and understood, with a clarity that left no room for comfort, that she had crossed something she could not uncross. The envelope in the garage had been the door. She had walked through it. And somewhere behind her, in a town she had built her whole quiet life inside of, two unmarked vehicles were circling her empty street, and the people inside them were looking for something that was currently pressed against her ribs in a canvas bag, and they were not going to stop looking. Her father had known this was coming. He had planned for it. He had left her the exact person she needed. He had done everything a careful man could do to protect her from the consequences of what he knew, and it still hadn't been enough to protect himself. She pressed her hand flat against the bag, felt the faint edge of the drive through the canvas. Whatever happens, he had written, never let them know you have this. They already knew, which meant the only direction left was forward, all the way through to the end her father had been building toward for 8 years and never lived to see. She looked at Vincent in the seat beside her, the silver at his temples, the lines in his face, the phone in his hand, the weight of a decision she could see him carrying even now. The name Marcus Webb, and 11 years of trust, and the particular grief of being betrayed by someone you chose. Marcus, she said. He looked at her. When this is over, she said, what happens to him? Vincent looked at her for a long, still moment. Then he turned back to the window. He didn't answer. And the silence that followed told her everything she needed to know about the kind of world she had just stepped all the way into. The car rode for 40 minutes before anyone spoke again. Claire watched the highway unroll ahead of them, the flat Ohio landscape giving way to something slightly more rural, the exits getting farther apart, the gas stations and fast food signs thinning out. The driver, whose name she still didn't know, kept a steady 70 miles an hour and checked his mirrors more than strictly necessary. Vincent sat beside her with his phone in his hand and did not look at it. He looked straight ahead, and whatever was happening inside that stillness, she could not read it. Maisie was safe. She repeated that to herself at intervals. The way you repeat a thing, you need to stay true. Vincent's people at the school. 2 people, he had said, already watching before he knocked on her door. Her father's name on a piece of paper in a garage, pointing toward this man, who had been 3 steps ahead from the beginning. Her father had trusted him. She was trying to do the same. The car turned off to the highway at an exit with no signage. She recognized and moved through a series of county roads, 2-lane, tree-lined, the kind of roads that existed purely to connect small towns to other small towns with nothing much in between. After 12 minutes of this, the driver turned into a gravel driveway that disappeared through a break in a tree line and ended at a single-story house set back from the road, surrounded by enough land on all sides that the nearest neighbor would be a sound-requiring distance away. The house was not abandoned. The porch light was on. Someone had cut the grass recently. Whose house is this? Claire said. Mine, Vincent said. She looked at him. Technically, he said, it belongs to a holding company that belongs to another holding company. He opened the car door. But I bought it 6 years ago. I stay here occasionally. You have a safe house in Ohio. I have several things in several places, he said, without particular satisfaction. Your father knew about this one. She followed him inside. The interior was sparse but not cold. A living room with a couch and 2 chairs arranged without decoration. A kitchen that had the particular look of a room used occasionally but maintained carefully. A hallway that presumably led to bedrooms. No personal objects on any surface. No photographs. Nothing that said someone lived here so much as something that said someone had thought carefully about what a functioning space required. A man was waiting in the kitchen. He was younger than Vincent by at least 15 years. Early 40s, lean, with the particular kind of alertness that comes from a background in something physical and disciplined. He had a laptop open on the kitchen table and stood up when they came in. This is Garrett, Vincent said. He handles certain technical matters for me. Garrett looked at Claire with a directness that was not rude but was not warm either. Dr. Whitmore, he said. A statement, not a greeting. The trace, Vincent said to him, before Claire could respond. Garrett turned back to the laptop. Picked up within the first 90 minutes, he said. They flagged the server ping and ran the IP back to a regional router in Denton. They don't have a precise address yet. They'll have the street within the hour if they're running the standard protocol. They'll have the street, Claire said, but I won't be on it. Correct, Garrett said. But your neighbors will be, and they'll ask questions. He glanced at Vincent. They sent someone to the clinic as well, 40 minutes ago, asking about Dr. Whitmore's schedule. Claire felt the blood leave her face. The clinic. Your colleague, Petra Simmons, told them you'd taken additional bereavement leave. She didn't give them anything useful. Garrett paused. She doesn't appear to know anything. Claire pressed the heel of her hand against her sternum. Petra, who had brought soup. Petra, who had stood in her kitchen for 10 minutes with her coat still on because she hadn't planned to stay, just to drop off the food, because that was the kind of person Petra was. They approached her in person, Claire said. Outside the clinic, yes. Which means they're not worried about being seen. Which means, Vincent said from behind her, they're past the stage of being careful. They want the drive, and they want it quickly. He moved to the table and looked at Garrett's screen. The vehicle's on her street. 2. Both rentals. Both registered to different names that don't exist. They left the street about 20 minutes ago, probably once they confirmed she wasn't in the house. Garrett clicked something. One of them is currently sitting outside the school. The word school arrived in Claire's chest like a physical thing. Maisie, she said. My people are inside, Vincent said. He was already on his phone. She does not leave the building. No one gets to her. He turned partially away and spoke into the phone in a low, rapid voice. Claire stood in the middle of the kitchen and breathed. She was a doctor. She had stood in the middle of situations that required her to keep functioning when her body wanted to shut down. Not because she was especially brave, but because the training had gone deep enough that it overrode the panic at the critical moment. She deployed that now. Inventory the situation. What do you have? What do you need? What's the next actionable step? She had the drive. She had Vincent, whose value she still could not fully calculate, but who had not so far been wrong about anything. She had no idea if Maisie understood any of what was happening, which was the one mercy. Garrett, she said. He looked at her. The file's on the drive, she said. My father organized them in a specific structure. Can you tell from looking at the file tree whether anything is missing, whether there are gaps? Garrett glanced at Vincent, who had his back to them, still on the phone. I can try, Garrett said. She pulled the drive from her bag and set it on the table. They worked for 35 minutes. Garrett moved through the file structure with practiced efficiency, cross-referencing something on his own laptop that Claire could not see fully. She sat beside him and watched, asking occasional questions that he answered without condescension, which she appreciated. Vincent came back to the table. He stood at the end of it, not sitting, with his phone in his hand and an expression that had settled into something colder than what she'd seen before. Problem, he said. Garrett kept working. What kind of problem? Claire said. I reached out to Sandra Holt, Vincent said. Through a channel I've used twice before to communicate with her, the channel came back dead. Dead meaning the contact point has been deactivated, he said, meaning either Sandra shut it down herself or someone shut it down for her. The kitchen felt slightly smaller. She could have shut it down herself, Claire said. She could have, he said, if she had a reason to go dark, if something changed on her end. He set his phone face down on the table. Or she has been compromised. Compromised meaning what specifically? Meaning someone reached her before we did, he said, and made it impossible for her to receive this. He looked at the drive on the table between them. Claire looked at it too, at the small black rectangle that her father had spent 8 years filling. That had cost him everything to build, and that now existed in a landscape where the person they had planned to give it to might be unreachable. There's another way in, she said. There has to be. You spent 8 years building toward this. There must be a contingency. There are contingencies, Vincent said. Most of them take time we may not have. Most of them, Garrett said, without looking up from his screen. Both of them looked at him. There's one that doesn't take time, he said. He clicked something, turned the laptop so Vincent could see. This. Claire watched Vincent look at the screen. She watched the particular stillness of his face as he read whatever was there. No, he said. It's the fastest path. I said no. Vincent. Garrett's voice had the tone of someone who had argued this before, who knew the shape of the wall they were pushing against. We don't have Sandra. We don't have the standard channel. We have 4 hours before Damien's people have a confirmed location on her and an unknown leak inside your organization. This is the path. What path? Claire said. Neither of them answered immediately. What path? She said again. Vincent looked at her. There is a man named Ray Colton, he said. He is a senior partner at a federal law firm that has direct access to the investigative division Sandra works through. He has handled whistleblower cases of this scale before. He has a track record of protecting evidence and the people who come forward with it. That sounds good, Claire said. What's the problem? The problem, Vincent said, and something moved through his jaw, is that Ray Colton's firm has worked against me in the past. He is not a friend. He has tried, twice, to build cases that would have put me in prison. Has he broken anything illegal to do it? No. So he's a federal lawyer who follows the law and has tried to prosecute you, essentially. And you're saying no to using him because of personal history. I'm saying no, Vincent said, because the moment we walk into Ray Colton's office, everything I've spent 15 years building becomes visible. Every operation, every arrangement, every agreement I've kept in the dark to stay functional. He held her gaze. He will not stop at Damien Crosswell. He will come for me as well, and for everyone associated with me. The kitchen was very quiet. How many people, Claire said carefully, are associated with you? Enough, he said, that it is not a simple answer. She sat with that for a moment. She looked at Garrett, who had gone back to his screen with the expression of someone who had already said his piece and was waiting for the room to catch up. She looked back at Vincent. My father knew about this option, she said. Didn't he? Vincent's expression didn't change, but the pause was 3 beats too long. He did, Vincent said, and he knew what it would cost you. Yes. And he chose it anyway, she said. He built it into the contingencies. He put it on Garrett's list. Your father was a thorough man, Vincent said. His voice was flat, but there was something beneath the flatness that had changed, something that sounded at its very bottom like a man standing at the edge of something he'd been walking toward for a long time and not entirely wanting to arrive. He trusted you to do it anyway, Claire said, when it came down to it. He was optimistic. He was right about you, she said, wasn't he? A long silence. Then Vincent's phone buzzed. He looked at it, and the expression that crossed his face then was the first one she had seen on him that she could not immediately interpret. It was not alarm. It was not calculation. It was something rawer than either, and it lasted only about 2 seconds before the control came back down over it. But she saw it. What? She said. He turned the phone so she could read the screen. It was a message from a number saved only as a single letter, M. The message read, She's gone, Vincent. I'm sorry. Sandra Holt was found in her apartment this morning. They're calling it a suicide. Claire read it twice. She became aware of the sound of the refrigerator, the tick of something cooling in the walls of the house. Garrett had stopped typing. She's dead, Claire said. Yes. They killed her. It will be investigated as a suicide, Vincent said. It will probably be closed as a suicide. There will be paperwork and a finding and a case number, and 6 months from now, no one will be looking at it. The same way they were going to close my father. Yes. She stood up. She pushed the chair back and walked to the kitchen window and looked out at the tree line. Bare branches, gray sky, the kind of landscape that offered nothing. She pressed her forehead against the glass for just a moment. The cold of it was startling and real. Sandra Holt. A woman she had never met. A woman who had spent 4 years building a case because she believed in it enough to keep going. Dead in her apartment on a Tuesday morning because she had been close enough to the truth that someone decided she was a problem, like her father. The same hand. The same decision made by the same man from behind his layers and intermediaries and systems, the way Damien Crosswell did everything, so far back from the act that nothing would ever stick. She turned around. Marcus Webb, she said. Vincent looked at her. Was Marcus Webb the only person who knew about Sandra Holt, she said. The only person in your organization who knew about her and the channel and the connection. Vincent said nothing. Vincent. No, he said. She felt it before she understood it fully. Who else? 3 people in my inner circle knew about Sandra, he said. His voice had gone very quiet. Marcus. A woman named Diane Cross, who handles legal strategy. And, he stopped. And, Claire said. And Garrett, he said. Garrett looked up from his screen. The room changed. It was not dramatic. Nobody moved suddenly. No one raised their voice. It was just the 3 of them in a kitchen in a farmhouse on a county road in Ohio. and the air between them became something entirely different in the space of 3 seconds. Garrett's face was completely still. "Garrett," Vincent said, "just the name. No accusation in it yet, just the name held out between them." "You need to think very carefully," Garrett said, "about what you're about to say." "I need you to tell me where you were this morning," Vincent said, "before you came here." "I was monitoring specifically," Vincent said, "building by building. Account for this morning." Garrett closed the laptop. He set his hands flat on the table. His face had not changed, had not gone defensive or guilty or frightened. It had simply gone to a particular blankness that Claire recognized from emergency rooms, from people who had made a decision and were now waiting for the consequences. "I'm not going to do this in front of her," Garrett said. "Yes," Vincent said, "you are." "Vincent, Sandra Holt is dead," Vincent said. The flatness in his voice had become something else now, harder, hotter underneath, contained with obvious effort. "Richard Whitmore is dead. And the first thing that happened when the drive was accessed, the very first thing within 90 minutes, was that a vehicle appeared at that school." He took one step closer to the table. "The only person who knew where Maisie went to school, beyond myself, was you. I told you when I was setting the surveillance. You were the one who confirmed the school's location." The clock on the kitchen wall ticked. Claire stood very still. She could feel her heartbeat in her fingertips. Garrett looked at Vincent, then he looked at Claire. And the thing that moved across his face then, so briefly she almost missed it, was not guilt and not defiance. It was something that looked almost like sorrow, like a person who had been carrying something for a long time and was exhausted by the weight of it. "I didn't touch Sandra," he said. "But you knew she was going to be touched," Vincent said. Garrett said nothing. "You knew," Vincent said, and his voice dropped lower, which was worse than if it had gotten louder. "And you did not come to me." "I couldn't come to you," Garrett said, "because I didn't know what you'd do. Because the people who came to me—" He stopped. His hands pressed flat against the table. "They told me if I came to you, they would make what happened to Whitmore look gentle compared to what they do to my family. My daughter is 9 years old, Vincent. They knew her name. They knew her teacher's name." The silence lasted a long time. Claire listened to it. She understood it, the specific terror underneath what Garrett had just said. Her own daughter's face moved through her mind and she forced it back. "What did you give them?" Vincent said. "The channel to Sandra, the school location, the general timeline of when the drive would be accessed." Garrett's voice was flat now, stripped of everything. "They said they just wanted the drive. They said if I helped them find it before it was used, they'd leave everyone alone." "They said," Vincent repeated. "I know," Garrett said. "I know how it sounds." "They killed Richard Whitmore," Vincent said. "They killed Sandra Holt, and you believed them when they said they just wanted the drive." Garrett closed his eyes for 2 seconds. "I was trying to protect my daughter." "I know that," Vincent said, and something in his voice very briefly broke into something human. "I know that's what you were doing, and I understand it." He was quiet for a moment. "And it doesn't change what I have to do." Garrett opened his eyes. He looked at Vincent with an expression that had given up expecting anything. "Where are they?" Vincent said. "All of them. Where does Damien's coordination happen from?" "I don't know the top level." "What do you know?" "There's a man named Soto," Garrett said. "He's the operational layer between Damien and the contractors. He's been running the search for the drive. I have a phone number and an address in Columbus where they've been staging from." "Give it to me," Vincent said. Garrett told him. Vincent looked at him for a long time after. Claire watched the two of them and said nothing, because there was nothing she could say that was useful. This was between them. The weight of 11 years, the specific damage of betrayal by someone you trusted completely, the fact that understanding a thing didn't make it hurt any differently. "Garrett," Vincent said finally. "Yeah." "Your daughter's name." Garrett looked at him. "Tell me her name," Vincent said, "and where she is right now." Something moved through Garrett's face then, something vast and complicated. "Emma," he said. "She's with my sister in Cleveland. I sent them last week when things started." "I'll make sure they stay safe," Vincent said, "regardless of what happens from here." He said it without inflection, without making it into a promise or a performance. He said it like a man stating a fact that had already been decided. Garrett looked at the table. Okay, he said. Vincent turned to Claire. We need to leave this location, now. If he gave them the school, he gave them this address as well. Did you give them this address? Claire said to Garrett. Garrett looked at her. Yes, he said. Yesterday. Before I knew you'd already moved the drive. Yesterday. Before she had even known this house existed. How long ago did you last contact them? Claire said. This morning, before I came here. So they know we're here, she said. They know I was bringing you here, he said. They may have assumed it fell through when I didn't confirm. May have, she said. Yes, he said. May have. She looked at Vincent. We need Maisie. I know. We need her now, not in 20 minutes, now. I'm calling. He already had the phone to his ear. She picked up her bag. She picked up the drive. She had a thought and turned back to Garrett. The files, she said. You were looking at the file structure when this happened. Did you see anything? Any gap? Anything missing? Garrett looked at her. The sorrow in his face was still there, underneath everything else. There's a subfolder marked with a triple asterisk, he said. It's encrypted separately from the rest. Heavier encryption, something your father built on top of the drive's main layer. I don't know what's in it. My father built a room inside the room, she said. Yes. She thought about her father, the most careful man Vincent had ever known. A man who planned for everything, including the possibility that even his most trusted ally might be compromised. A man who trusted no one with the whole thing. Is the separate encryption tied to anything external? She said. Does it need a second key the same way the main drive did? I think so, Garrett said. But I didn't find a notation for the key in any of the files I could access. She stood very still. Her father had hidden half the decryption key with Vincent. He had hidden the drive itself in the garage. He had written a note with one name on it. He had left her exactly what she needed to find the next step, if she was looking for it. Because Richard Whitmore did not leave loose ends. Richard Whitmore labeled things. Richard Whitmore made lists. She thought about his journals. 30 years of journals, written in tight, cramped handwriting in whatever notebooks he could find. She had left them in the house. She had sorted through his papers and his files and his organized folders, and she had stacked the journals in a box in his study because she couldn't look at them yet, and she wasn't ready to throw them away. She had left them in the house in her father's town, the house that was currently being watched. Vincent, she said. He lowered the phone. Maisie is in the car, 10 minutes from here. I need to get back into my father's house, she said. He stared at her. There are journals, she said. 30 years of them. He left the second key somewhere in those journals. I know it. He would have hidden it where only someone who knew him would know to look. That house is being watched. I know. Going back there is not something I can protect you through, he said. Not with the resources I currently have, with Garrett out of commission, with Damien's people mobile. I'm not asking you to protect me through it, she said. I'm telling you what I need to do. You figure out how. He looked at her with that measuring expression. Then slowly, something shifted in it, the same thing she had seen briefly in her kitchen that morning when he had said her father was right about her. We pick up Maisie first, he said. She doesn't sit in a car. Agreed. And then we plan this properly. Not fast. Properly. You have until we reach Maisie to come up with a plan, she said. That's the timeline. Vincent looked at her for one more second. Then he moved toward the door, and she followed, and behind them Garrett sat at the kitchen table with his hands still flat on the surface, looking at the middle distance like a man trying to figure out the precise moment when things had gone irrevocably wrong. The gravel crunched under their feet, the gray sky pressed down. And Claire Whitmore, who had walked into a garage 3 weeks ago looking for a snow shovel, got into a car and accepted, fully and without flinching, that the woman who had walked into that garage was someone she could no longer afford to be. Something harder was required now. Something her father, in his careful way, might have seen coming. She pressed the drive against her ribs and felt the car accelerate down the county road, and she thought, whatever is in that second room, whatever my father hid inside the thing he was already hiding, it is the piece that changes everything, and it was sitting in a box in a house full of people who wanted to make sure it was never found. Maisie was sitting in the back seat of a black SUV in the parking lot of a Lutheran church 3 miles from her school, still wearing her backpack, eating a granola bar with the focused concentration of a child who had been told to stay calm and had decided the best way to do that was to eat something. She looked up when Claire opened the door. "Mom," she said, not frightened, assessing, the same gray-green eyes her grandfather had, reading the situation the way Richard Whitmore would have read it, taking inventory before reacting. "Hey, baby." Claire got in beside her and pulled the door shut. "You okay?" "The men said there was a family emergency," Maisie said. "They said you sent them." "I did." Maisie looked past Claire's shoulder at Vincent, who had gotten into the front seat. She studied him with the particular directness of a 7-year-old who had not yet learned to pretend she wasn't looking. "Who is he?" she said. "He was a friend of Grandpa's," Claire said. Maisie considered this. She took another bite of the granola bar. "Is the emergency because of Grandpa?" Claire looked at her daughter. The crumbs on her jacket, the way one sock had slid down inside her shoe, the small face doing the work of staying steady. "Yes," Claire said, "but we're going to be okay. I need you to trust me." "I do trust you," Maisie said, as if this were obvious. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere safe for a little while." "Do I have homework?" "It can wait." Maisie finished the granola bar. She folded the wrapper into a precise rectangle, the way her grandfather had always folded things. A habit she had picked up from him without either of them ever discussing it. Claire watched her do it and felt something crack quietly in the back of her chest. The car moved. Vincent made 2 calls in the front seat, his voice low and specific. Claire caught fragments, a street name, a reference to a window that was a 2-hour window, and the word Columbus said twice in a tone that turned it into something other than a city. She leaned close to Maisie. "Can you put your headphones in for a little while? I need to talk to the man in front." Maisie pulled her small headphones from the front pocket of her backpack with the efficiency of a child who spent a lot of time in cars. She put them in. She found something on her tablet. Within 90 seconds, she was absorbed. Claire looked forward. "Columbus," she said quietly. "The address Garrett gave me," Vincent said. "Soto runs the operation from a commercial property on the east side. A distribution warehouse, on paper. It's where they've been coordinating the search." "That's where we need to go." "That's where I need to go," he said. "You need to go to your father's house." "We already talked about this." "We talked about the journals," he said. "The plan was always for you to get the journals while you walk into a warehouse full of Damien's people with what exactly?" she said. "You said yourself your resources are compromised. Garrett is out. Marcus Webb is still out there. Who exactly is going with you?" "I have 2 people I trust completely," he said. "They're meeting me in Columbus." "2 people." "They're sufficient." She looked at him. She thought about Sandra Holt in her apartment. She thought about what sufficiency looked like when Damien Crosswell decided it was time to stop being careful. "The journals," she said. "If the key is in there and I can get to it, we have everything we need for Ray Colton. The complete package. Everything my father built." "Yes." "And if I can't get to it because Damien's people are still watching the house?" "They may have pulled back," Vincent said. "After the trace went cold, they may have assumed the drive was moved out of the area entirely. They don't know about the journals." "They don't know about the journals yet," she said. "If Garrett told them about the second encrypted folder." "Garrett didn't know about the journals," Vincent said. "Your father kept the contingencies in separate compartments. I didn't know about the second folder until Garrett told us 20 minutes ago." She looked out the window. The Ohio countryside was giving way to something more populated. The outskirts of a larger town, box stores and traffic lights, and the ordinary machinery of people's lives moving alongside them without any awareness of what was in this car. "I'm not going to my father's house without you," she said. "Claire, 2 things have to happen," she said. "The journals and Columbus. That's the whole thing. And we have 1 day, maybe less, before Damien's people figure out where we are." She kept her voice even and low, below the sound of whatever Maisie was watching. "You can't be in 2 places, so we do Columbus first, together, and then the house." Vincent was quiet. "You said 2 people you trust completely," she said. 3 people plus you is better than 2 people plus you." "You're not—" "I'm not what?" she said. "A combatant? I'm a trauma physician. I've kept people alive in situations that would make your people flinch. I know how bodies fail. I know how to stay functional when every instinct says shut down." She held his gaze in the rearview mirror. "Don't tell me what I'm not." Vincent looked at her in the mirror for a long moment. Then he turned back to the road. Columbus, he said, and then the house. Yes, she said. You do exactly what I tell you when I tell you. As long as what you tell me makes sense. It will. Then we have an agreement. They drove. The two people Vincent trusted completely turned out to be a woman named Roz, who was approximately 50, with the forearms of someone who did physical work and the eyes of someone who did not sleep easily, and a man who introduced himself only as Cole, younger, quiet, with a stillness that reminded Claire uncomfortably of Vincent himself, the kind of stillness that wasn't peace but was something that had been built over peace after peace had been taken away. They met in the parking lot of a truck stop outside Columbus, late afternoon, the sky going orange at the edges and the air carrying the cold that came in fast in Ohio once the sun started dropping. Maisie had fallen asleep in the back seat, headphones still in, tablet gone dark in her lap. Claire had covered her with a jacket and gotten out of the car. Roz looked at Claire with assessment rather than welcome. "You're the doctor," she said. "Yes." "Vincent says you're coming in." "Yes." Roz looked at Vincent. "That complicates the extraction if something goes sideways." "She's not extraction," Vincent said. "She stays back and maintains communication." "I thought I was—" Claire started. "You're our eyes on the outside," Vincent said. He looked at her with something that was not negotiation. "Maisie is asleep in that car. Someone has to be with her. Someone has to be on the outside of the building in communication with us in case the approach fails, and we need an alternate exit." He let that settle. "This is not me sidelining you. This is the operation as it has to work." She looked at Maisie through the car window, her daughter asleep, one shoe half off, completely unaware. "Fine," she said. "But I want real-time communication. I hear everything." "You hear everything," he said. Rose pulled a small earpiece from her jacket and held it out. Claire took it. The warehouse was on Meridian Industrial Drive, a long, flat, utilitarian stretch of commercial properties east of the city, the kind of street that existed in every American city, where the buildings were designed to be functional and nothing else, and the only light came from security floods mounted high on the walls. The property Garrett had identified was a mid-sized warehouse with a painted-over sign above the loading dock that might have said something about freight in a previous life. There were two vehicles in the lot, both dark, both backed in, the way people parked when they wanted to leave fast. Claire sat in the truck stop parking lot, with Maisie asleep in the back and the earpiece in and her phone on her knee, and she listened. Vincent and Roz and Cole moved on foot from 2 blocks east, using the service alley. She knew this because she could hear their breathing in the earpiece, controlled, steady, the particular rhythm of people who were doing something they had done before. Vincent's voice came low. "Southeast corner, 1 visible. Ross, north side." A pause. "Cole, loading dock." She gripped her phone. Her heart was doing something she didn't entirely have control over. Not panic, not quite, but the cousin of panic. The thing that happened right before you had to make your hands work regardless. She checked Maisie. Still asleep. 2 inside the dock, Cole's voice in the earpiece. 1 near the south window. "Soto," Vincent said. "Is he on site?" "Blue sedan at the far end," Roz said. "It's registered to a shell company tied to Damien's construction group. He's here." A silence. Then, "We move in 4 minutes." Claire sat and breathed. She had treated gunshot wounds. She had worked car accidents where people came in pieces, and she had kept the pieces viable until the surgeons could do their work. She knew exactly how fast a human body could fail and how much damage it could sustain while still being pulled back. This knowledge was not currently comforting. It was the opposite of comforting. It told her precisely what could go wrong in a warehouse in Columbus in the next 4 minutes. "Vincent," she said into the phone. "I'm here," he said. "Come back out," she said quietly. "Whatever happens in there, come back out." A pause. "Working on it," he said. Then the sound changed. Movement, a door, the particular echo of an interior space. And she stopped talking because talking meant he might miss something. What followed was 9 minutes that she could not fully reconstruct afterward. Not because she wasn't listening, but because sound without sight created a kind of controlled terror that fragmented memory at the edges. She heard raised voices, not Vincent's, other voices, someone issuing an order in a tone that expected compliance. She heard Cole say something short and sharp. She heard what might have been furniture, a chair, a table, something heavy going over. She heard Roz say southwest, two more, southwest, and then something that was not words. She was out of the car and standing beside it before she realized she had moved. Maisie was still asleep. She made herself get back in. "Vincent," she said into the phone. Nothing. "Vincent?" The earpiece had gone to a kind of white noise, not dead, still transmitting, but no voices. "Talk to me. Someone talk to me." "Clear," Roz said. Her voice was tight. "Southeast is clear." "Cole," Vincent said. He sounded like a man who had been running, breath coming harder, the words compressed. "Cole? Where are you?" A pause that lasted 5 full seconds. "Here," Cole said. "I'm here. Yeah, I'm good." "Soto," Vincent said. "Conference room, back left," Roz said. "He's there. He didn't run." A silence. Then Vincent. "Stay on the door. I'm going in." Claire sat in the car. She pressed her hand flat on the dashboard and felt the cold of it, and focused on that, the solid, real surface under her palm. She heard a door. She heard Vincent say, "Sit down." A man's voice, accented, controlled, the voice of someone who was frightened and was working hard not to show it. "I don't know what you think. Sit down," Vincent said again. Quieter the second time. That was worse. A chair. "You sent people to a school," Vincent said. "Today. This morning. I don't know what The school has security cameras," Vincent said. "Your vehicle is on 4 of them. We will have the footage in 2 hours through a contact at the city. I'm giving you a chance to tell me something useful before that happens, and you become someone I have no reason to keep talking to." Silence. "Damien Crosswell," Vincent said. "The operation to recover Richard Whitmore's evidence. Walk me through the structure. Who knows what?" "If I tell you that," the man, Soto, said, "I'm dead." "If you don't tell me," Vincent said, "you're still dead. The difference is what happens to your family in the preceding period." He said it without heat. That was the thing that made it land. The complete absence of theatrics. Just a fact, stated. A very long silence. Then Soto started talking. Claire listened. She heard it all. The architecture of what Damien had built, as Soto understood it. The financial routing that Richard had spent 8 years documenting. The names, 3 names she didn't recognize, and one she did. A city councilman from a town 2 hours from Denton who had appeared at her father's funeral and said he was sorry for her loss, and she had thanked him without thinking. The reach of it was larger than she had understood, even after everything Vincent had told her. It went into local government and state contracting and 2 federal departments whose names she knew from news coverage and had always vaguely trusted. And there was something else. Something Soto said near the end, in the particular tone of a man releasing something he had been holding for a long time, because holding it had become more dangerous than letting go. "The Whitmore job," Soto said. "I didn't run the Whitmore job." "I know who ran it," Vincent said. "No," Soto said. "You think you know. You think it was Webb. It wasn't Webb." Silence. "Webb was a delivery system," Soto said. "He passed information. He didn't make decisions. The decision to move on Whitmore, the timing, the method, that came from inside." "Inside Damien's operation," Vincent said. "Inside yours," Soto said. The earpiece was completely silent. Claire stopped breathing. "That's not possible," Vincent said. His voice had changed. Not broken, but something underneath the control had shifted, like a load-bearing wall that had taken a hit. "Webb didn't know about the final meeting," Soto said. "He passed contact information and the school location. That's all he had access to. The meeting location, the specific address where Whitmore was supposed to hand off the drive, came from someone who knew the operational details. Someone at the top of your structure." "There is no one at the top of my structure who knew that address," Vincent said. "I chose it the day before. I told one person." Silence. "Who?" Soto said. A pause that lasted long enough that Claire counted it. 4 seconds, 5, 6. "Diane Cross," Vincent said. "Diane Cross," Soto said, "has been on Damien's payroll for 3 years." The car felt very small. Claire sat in it with Maisie asleep beside her and the earpiece in and the cold pressing in through the window seals, and she heard Vincent Blackwood, the most controlled man she had ever encountered, go completely silent for the first time. Diane Cross, the woman who handled legal strategy. The woman who was one of 3 people in Vincent's inner circle who had known about Sandra Holt. The woman who had known the meeting location because Vincent had told her. The woman who had been with him long enough that telling her would have felt like thinking aloud. "Does Damien know where she is right now?" Vincent said finally. His voice was different now, still controlled. But the quality of it had changed, something colder, something that had moved past what Claire had seen before into territory she didn't have a name for. "She reports twice a day," Soto said. "Noon and 6. She hasn't reported since noon." "What time is it?" Vincent said. 5:40, Roz said from somewhere near the door. 20 minutes, Vincent said. "She reports in 20 minutes. A pause. "Where does she report to?" "A secure line," Soto said. "I have the number." "Give it to me." Claire heard it. A number recited slowly, read from something. She typed it into her phone. Then Vincent said, "Roz Cole." A pause. "Get him somewhere secure. Don't hurt him. He's useful." Footsteps. Movement. "Claire," Vincent said. "I'm here," she said. "Are you still at the truck stop?" "Yes." "I'm coming to you," he said. "Stay there." He came out of the warehouse 7 minutes later. Cole was with him, walking steadily but with one hand pressed against his side in a way that told her something had happened to his ribs. Roz came separately, from the north side, and she had a cut above her eyebrow that had bled down the side of her face and dried there. Claire was already out of the car. She had the small medical kit from her work bag. She always carried one, habit from residency. And she intercepted Cole first because he was favoring the right side and she needed to know if it was just ribs or something worse. "Let me see," she said. "I'm fine." "Let me see." She pressed her fingers along his rib cage with practiced precision, watching his face. He hissed once, sharply, at the 5th rib. "Cracked, not broken. You'll breathe through it. Don't let it make you shallow. Shallow breathing leads to fluid, and that's worse." She moved to Rose. "Head down." Roz bent forward with the patient compliance of someone who recognized competence. Claire examined the cut. 2 centimeters, not deep enough to need stitches, but close. She cleaned it with what she had and pressed a small butterfly closure over it. "You're a doctor," Roz said, like she was confirming something she'd been told but hadn't believed until now. "Yes," Vincent said. "He's occasionally right about things." Claire stepped back. She looked at Vincent, who was standing slightly apart from the others, on his phone, with his back to the car and his shoulders set in a way that radiated something she recognized now as the posture of a man containing something that wanted to come out much louder. She waited until he put the phone down. He turned. There was a bruise developing along his left jaw, not a punch, something that had caught him at angle, the kind of thing that would stiffen up badly by morning. His coat had a tear in the left shoulder. He was holding himself with the precision of someone who had learned to perform physical composure even when their body was arguing. "Diane Cross," she said. "Yes." "Where is she?" "She's in Columbus," he said. "She came out here 3 days ago. Said it was to manage the legal exposure around the federal investigation. She handles that kind of thing for me, the legitimate side of what I do." He stopped. "I thought she was protecting my interests." "She was protecting someone's interests." "Yes." "She reports in..." Claire checked her phone. 12 minutes. "I know." "If she doesn't report, Damien knows something went wrong." "I know." "And if Damien knows something went wrong, he runs," Vincent said. "He destroys what he can, moves assets, creates distance. We lose him. Everything your father built becomes evidence without a defendant." She looked at him. The bruise on his jaw. The torn coat. The thing behind his eyes that she had seen arrive in the warehouse recording and hadn't left since. "You need to get to her before 6, she said. "Yes." "And you need her to make the call," she said. "Report in as normal. Buy us time." "She won't do that voluntarily." "Then you need to give her a reason to." Vincent looked at her. "You have 9 minutes, she said. "Do you know where she is?" "Yes," he said. "She's staying at a hotel 2 miles from here. She doesn't know yet that Soto's facility has been compromised." "Go," Claire said. "You'll be..." "Maisie is in the car," she said. "Rose and Cole are here. I'm a grown woman. Go." He went. Rose and Cole stayed with the car. Claire got back in beside Maisie, who had shifted in her sleep but not woken. The tablet had slid to the floor. Claire picked it up and set it on the seat. She sat in the parking lot of a truck stop outside Columbus with her daughter asleep beside her and the earpiece in. And she waited for a man she had known for exactly one day. A man who had sat at her mother's dinner table 11 years ago and frightened everyone in the room. To do something she still couldn't fully visualize, but that she had asked him to do anyway, because the alternative was worse. Her phone buzzed. "Unknown number," she answered. "Dr. Whitmore," said a voice she didn't know. "My name is Diane Cross. I believe we should speak before your associate does something he'll regret." Claire went very still. "I see you're not going to respond immediately," Diane said. Her voice was composed, not cold, not warm, the voice of a professional. "That's fine. I'll speak. You listen." "Where's Vincent?" Claire said. "In the hotel lobby," Diane said. "He's watching me have this conversation. He doesn't know you're the one I'm calling. I told him I was calling Damien's emergency line. He's letting me do it because he thinks it will tell him something." A pause. "It is telling him something, that I know he won't hurt me in a hotel lobby." "Is that true?" "I think so," Diane said. "He's angry. But Vincent Blackwood makes decisions with his head, not his stomach. That's always been his strength." Another pause. "And his limitation." "What do you want?" Claire said. "The same thing you want," Diane said. "Damien Crosswell in a federal prison, permanently." Claire said nothing. "You think I'm Damien's person?" Diane said. "I'm not. I'm nobody's person. I work for outcomes. I have worked for Damien's outcome when it served the larger goal. I worked for Vincent's outcome when it served the larger goal. The goal, Dr. Whitmore, is the same one your father had." "My father is dead," Claire said. "I know," Diane said, and her voice shifted slightly, not dramatic, but real. "I know he is, and I am sorry. I did not know what they were going to do to him. I would not have—" She stopped. "I am not asking you to believe that. I'm asking you to listen to what I'm offering." "Say it," Claire said. "I will make the 6 o'clock call," Diane said. "I will tell Damien that the situation is stable, that the drive has not been located, that his operation is intact. I will buy you 48 hours before he begins to suspect anything is wrong." "And in return?" "In return," Diane said, "when this is over and every name goes public, my name does not appear on the list of people who worked against you." "That's not my call to make," Claire said. "It becomes your call," Diane said, "the moment you're the one holding the complete evidence package and deciding who to give it to. Sandra Holt is dead. There's no federal investigator waiting for this. You're going to need a lawyer. You're going to need someone who can shepherd this into the right hands in a way that makes it stick." A beat. "I have spent 15 years learning exactly how to do that. I'm offering to do it." Claire pressed her hand against the door. The metal was cold through her palm. "If you're telling the truth," she said, "and you had nothing to do with my father's death, then you have nothing to lose by helping us regardless." "If I help you and my name appears on the public list," Diane said, "I have everything to lose. The people who paid me over the years are not all in Damien's network. Some of them are in places that will come after me quietly and efficiently when they see their names adjacent to mine." "You want immunity." "I want obscurity," Diane said. "Those are different things." Maisie shifted in her sleep, made a small sound, settled. Claire looked at her daughter and thought about her father. About 8 years of meticulous documentation, of carrying a secret that eventually cost him everything, about what it meant to make a deal in a gray space when the alternative was losing the whole thing. "Make the call," Claire said. "Buy us the 48 hours. Get us to a place where we can use what we have." She kept her voice flat. "If you do that, all of it, without deviation, I will make the case to the people receiving the evidence that your cooperation was instrumental." That's what I'm offering," Claire said. "Take it or don't." A long pause. "Make sure Vincent doesn't do anything foolish in the next 30 seconds, Diane said. "He looks like he's considering it." The call ended. Claire exhaled. She pulled the earpiece out and looked at it in her palm. Small, unremarkable, a piece of plastic that had carried 9 of the worst minutes of her life into her ear, and then she put it back in. "Vincent," she said. "Here." His voice was clipped. He had heard something, but not everything. "Let her make the call," she said. A pause. "What did she say to you?" I'll explain in the car. Let her make the call. A silence that lasted long enough she thought he wasn't going to do it. Then, fine. She heard distantly the sound of a woman's voice beginning a conversation in a controlled professional tone. The specific cadence of someone reporting in, all normal, nothing unusual, situation stable. She heard it and thought about her father sitting in his garage with a socket wrench in his hand, building something enormous and careful and invisible, while his daughter drove 5 hours away and became a doctor, and thought he was just a quiet man who lived alone. She thought about how wrong she had been. She thought about the journals in the box in his study. 30 years of tight, cramped handwriting, the second key hidden somewhere inside like the last thing he hadn't been able to give to anyone because he hadn't known yet who would need it. She needed it. They still had to go to her father's house, and they had 48 hours to do everything that had to be done before Damien Crosswell woke up to what was actually coming for him. The drive there was 2 hours. They left Cole with Roz in the truck stop. Cole's ribs needed rest, and Roz needed to monitor Soto in the warehouse to make sure no one came looking and found anything premature. Vincent drove. Diane Cross sat in the front passenger seat, which made the geometry of the car deeply uncomfortable. But she had made the call and she had bought them the time, and Claire had decided that practical usefulness outweighed every other feeling she currently had about the woman. Maisie woke up an hour in. She looked at Diane. She looked at the back of Vincent's head. She looked at her mother. "Are we going to Grandpa's house?" she said. Claire looked at her. "How did you know?" "Because that's where you go when something happens," Maisie said, with the matter-of-fact logic of a 7-year-old. "That's what you always said. You go to where the person was." Claire reached over and took her daughter's hand. "Yes," she said. "We're going to Grandpa's house." Maisie nodded. She leaned her head against Claire's arm. She did not ask anything else, which was either because she trusted her mother completely or because she understood more than a 7-year-old should have to, and Claire was not ready to find out which one it was. They reached Denton at 10:14 at night. The town was quiet, the specific quiet of a small Ohio town after 10, when the diners had closed and the gas stations ran on skeleton staff and the streets were mostly empty. Claire knew this town. She had grown up an hour from it, had come here for holidays and summers, and the years after her mother died when her father needed someone nearby. She knew the way the streetlights spaced out on the residential blocks, the particular orange cast of them, the way the sound of a car carried further than it should at night. She also knew, 3 blocks from her father's street, that something was wrong. "There," she said. Vincent had already seen it. A car parked on the far end of her father's block. Dark, engine off, but positioned at an angle that anyone who understood surveillance would recognize. Not a neighbor's car. Nobody parked like that on a residential street by accident. "They came back," she said. "One vehicle," Vincent said. "Probably 1 or 2 people. Overnight watch." He pulled over 2 blocks short of the street. "They don't know we're here." "Yet," Diane said. "Can we go through the alley?" Claire said. "The alley puts us at the back of the house," Vincent said. "The back door." "I have a key," she said. "And I know that house in the dark." He looked at her in the rear view. "Maisie stays in the car," he said. "With Diane." Claire looked at Diane. Diane looked back at her with the particular steadiness of a woman who had been navigating complicated situations for a long time. "She'll be safe," Diane said. "She better be," Claire said. She looked at Maisie. "Baby, I need you to stay in the car with this woman for a little while. Can you do that?" Maisie looked at Diane with those assessing eyes. "What's your name?" she said. "Diane," the woman said. "Do you like granola bars?" Maisie said. A pause. "Sure," Diane said. Maisie dug in her backpack and produced a second granola bar. She held it out. Diane took it. "Okay," Maisie said to her mother. "I'll stay." Claire kissed her daughter's head. She breathed her in, the smell of her shampoo, the warmth of her, for exactly 1 second. Then she got out of the car. The alley was dark and uneven. Cracked concrete, the backs of suburban houses, trash cans, and the occasional security light mounted too high to do anything useful. She had walked this alley as a teenager. She knew where the broken section was, knew to step left of the utility pole at the 3rd house down. Vincent moved behind her and slightly to her left. She didn't look back to check. She felt him there. The back gate of her father's house was the same wooden gate it had always been, the latch stiff in cold weather, the way it had been stiff every winter since she could remember. She lifted the latch with both hands the way she always had, one hand steadying the gate, one hand pulling the latch up and toward her, and it opened without noise. The garage door was to the left. The back door of the house was directly ahead, 6 steps up a small wooden porch. She put the key in the lock. The house smelled the same, Old Spice and cold weather staleness, and something she could only describe as him, the specific olfactory signature of her father's existence in these rooms, and her body understood it before her mind did, and her throat closed briefly, and she swallowed hard and kept moving. She knew where the study was. She went directly there, in the dark, because she knew this house better than she knew her own. The box was on the floor by the bookshelf where she had left it. She crouched and opened the flaps and felt in the dark for the journals. Stacks of them, the spiral-bound notebooks her father had used for 40 years. The particular texture of them unmistakable. She pulled out her phone and turned the flashlight on low, shading it with her hand. She had to think like her father. Where would he have hidden something in 30 years of journals that only someone who knew him would find? Not in the most recent journal, too obvious. Not in the oldest, too far from the time frame of what he was protecting. He would have put it somewhere in the middle, somewhere specific, somewhere that corresponded to a date that meant something. She thought. The year the investigation started. The year he first met Vincent. She found the journal from 8 years ago in the middle of the 3rd stack. She opened it. Her father's handwriting filled every page. She turned through it, scanning fast, looking for anything that broke the pattern. A page that felt different, a notation in the margin, a section that had been handled more than the rest. 30 pages in, she found it. A page that was not her father's usual daily writing. A page that had been carefully pasted. A single sheet, folded down to fit the journal page, taped at the edges, with the same dry tape that had been on the envelope in the garage. She peeled it carefully, unfolded it. Numbers. A sequence of characters in her father's handwriting, careful and precise. The block letters he used for important things. And beneath them, in smaller writing, for Vincent. He'll know the rest. She photographed it with her phone. She was folding it back when she heard it. A sound from the front of the house, specific and wrong. Not the creak of the house settling. The particular sound of a door that someone was trying not to make noise with and failing. They hadn't come through the back. They had come through the front. She looked up. Vincent was in the doorway of the study, and he had heard it too, and his face in the low flashlight glow was completely still. The specific stillness of someone switching modes, the way a room switches when you hit the breaker. He held up one finger. Then he pointed at the closet behind her. She shook her head. He looked at her. She held up the phone. The photograph of the key. He understood. He nodded once. She sent the photograph to his phone. She watched the sending bar move. She watched it complete. The sound from the front of the house became footsteps. 2 sets, she thought, maybe 3, moving through the living room toward the hallway. She was in the study. The study was at the end of the hallway. There was one way out of the study other than the door, the window, which opened onto the side yard, which connected to the alley. She looked at the window. She looked at Vincent. He took 1 step into the room and put himself between her and the doorway. "The window," he said, barely a sound. The window," he said. "Now, send Garrett's alternate contact, the one I gave you in the car. The photograph. Send it now and go." She looked at him. The bruise on his jaw. The torn coat. The thing in his eyes that was not fear. She understood now what it was. Had understood it since the warehouse, since Diane's call, since the parking lot where she had kissed her daughter's head. It was the look of a man who had decided something was worth more than whatever came next. Her father had worn that look. She had not known what it was on him either, until it was too late. She sent the photograph to the contact. She pulled up the window. It stuck, the way windows stuck in cold weather in old houses, and she yanked it and it came up with a sound that was too loud, and she didn't care because behind her she could hear the footsteps in the hallway, and they had stopped being careful. She got 1 leg through the window. She looked back. Vincent had turned to face the doorway. The footsteps reached it. The first man through the door stopped when he saw Vincent, not a hesitation born from uncertainty, but the specific stop of someone who recognized what they were looking at and was recalibrating how much trouble they were in. The second man behind him made a sound that might have been a word. Vincent said very quietly to neither of them in particular, "You put a car outside a school." And the quality of that sentence, the flatness of it, the absence of anything performative, was the last thing Claire heard before she went through the window and dropped into the cold side yard and ran. She ran through the alley. She ran the way Maisie left places she loved, fast, committed, not looking back. Her breath came in visible clouds in the November air, and her shoes hit the cracked concrete, and she counted the houses by the security lights and turned left at the utility pole and came out of the alley 2 blocks down from where the car was. She ran to it. She got in. Maisie was awake. Maisie had her hand in Diane's hand and was looking at the door with those gray-green eyes, Richard Whitmore's eyes, already knowing something before her mother said a word. "Where's the man?" Maisie said. Claire was breathing too hard to answer. Diane was looking at her, reading the situation with the speed of someone who had done it many times. "Did you get it?" she said. "I got it," Claire said. "I sent it, both of you." She looked at her phone. The sends confirmed. The photograph was out. "We need to go." "Vincent?" "We go," Claire said. "He told me to go." "We go." She got behind the wheel because Diane didn't know this town, and she did. She started the car. She pulled out. She drove. Maisie's hand found her arm in the dark. Small fingers, tight grip. "He'll come," Maisie said. Claire looked at the road, at the orange streetlights of her father's town going past on either side, at the dark ahead. "I know," she said. She didn't know. But she drove toward the thing that had to happen next, because there was no other direction anymore, and Richard Whitmore had not raised a woman who stopped when it was hard. He had raised someone who went all the way through. She drove for 6 minutes before her hands started shaking. Not the whole hand, just the fingers, a fine tremor she felt against the steering wheel, the kind her body produced when it had held too much tension for too long and was finally beginning to release it in the only way it knew how. She recognized it. She had seen it in herself after bad shifts, after the cases that went wrong, after the particular kind of emergency that required her to stay completely functional during the worst of it, and only showed her the bill afterward. She gripped the wheel tighter. Maisie had not let go of her arm. "Are you okay?" Maisie said. "I'm driving, baby." "That's not what I asked." Claire glanced at her daughter in the dark of the car. 7 years old, sitting up straight, her hand wrapped around her mother's forearm, with a seriousness that was entirely Richard Whitmore's. The gray-green eyes were steady. "I'm okay," Claire said. "I will be." Diane was in the passenger seat, her phone in her lap, her face angled toward the window. She was running calculations. Claire could feel it, the particular silence of a highly functional person processing options at speed. After 2 minutes of it, Diane said, "He'll get out." "You don't know that," Claire said. "No," Diane said. "But I know what he can do in a contained space against 2 men, and Vincent Blackwood has been getting out of contained spaces since before either of us knew him." Claire said nothing. "The photograph," Diane said. "You sent it to me and to the contact number he gave you." "Yes." "The contact is Ray Colton's office," Diane said. Claire looked at her briefly. "He told me in the car. He gave me the number and said if anything happened to him, to send it directly." "If anything happened to him," Diane repeated. "Yes." Diane absorbed this. "He was planning for the contingency," she said. "He was planning for everything," Claire said. "Just like my father." She pressed the accelerator slightly. "It apparently runs in the circles he keeps." They drove for another 4 minutes in silence. Then Diane's phone lit up. She looked at it. "Colton's office acknowledged receipt," she said. "They're requesting a call. At 11 at night." "Men like Ray Colton don't keep business hours when something like this lands on their desk," Diane said. "They keep the hours the evidence requires." She held the phone out. "Do you want to make this call, or do you want me to?" Claire looked at the road, at the dark ahead, at the headlights cutting through it. "Give me 5 minutes," she said. She found a gas station, the only one open this late on this stretch, its fluorescent lights a strange comfort against the dark. She pulled in. She parked away from the pumps, at the edge of the lot where the light got thin. She turned to Maisie. "I need to make a phone call," she said. "Can you stay in the car with Diane?" Maisie looked at Diane. Some negotiation was happening in her daughter's head. Claire could see the process of it, the same deliberate weighing that Richard had done before any decision. Finally, Maisie said, "Can I have another granola bar?" Diane, who had not smiled once since getting in the car, almost did. "I don't have one," she said, "but I'll owe you one." "Okay," Maisie said, and settled back. Claire got out of the car. The air was very cold. She could see her breath. She walked to the edge of the parking lot where the light stopped and the dark field behind the gas station began, and she stood there and called the number Diane had shown her. Ray Colton answered on the second ring. His voice was wide awake in the specific way of someone who had been expecting this call, not alert like someone startled from sleep, but alert like someone who had been sitting with the lights on. "Dr. Whitmore," he said. "You got the photograph," she said. "We got it. Our cryptography people are working on the key right now." A pause. "Do you have the physical drive?" "Yes." "I need it in my office," he said. "The photograph confirms the second encryption layer exists and gives us the key. But we need the drive itself to access the files legally, to establish chain of custody, to ensure the evidence is admissible." "I understand chain of custody," she said. "I'm a physician." "Of course," he said without condescension. "Then you understand why this has to be done correctly. If we move on this evidence and the handling is wrong, Damian Crosswell's lawyers bury us in procedural challenges and the whole thing collapses." "How quickly can you receive it?" "I can have people at any location you name in Ohio within 90 minutes, he said. "We have a field team already moving." "Already moving," she said, "based on one photograph." "Based on 8 years of documentation that I could see in the file tree structure, even in a photograph, Dr. Whitmore." His voice was careful but direct. "I have been trying to get to Damian Crosswell's financial records for 4 years. Sandra Holt was trying for the same amount of time. Sandra is dead. I am not going to waste the window her death created." She held her phone against her ear and looked out at the dark field and felt the cold of the Ohio night coming in through her jacket. "You know about Sandra," she said. "I know about Sandra," he said. "She and I were not on the same team in any official sense, but we were pointing at the same target. I found out this afternoon." A pause that held more weight than a professional pause. "Tell me where to send my people." She thought. She needed a location that was not her house, and not her father's house, and not the truck stop, and not the farmhouse. She needed somewhere ordinary and public and defensible. She named the hospital in the next town over, the county hospital she had referred patients to a dozen times, that she could walk into without anyone questioning her presence, that had a public waiting area with security and cameras, and the particular kind of witness-rich environment that made it a bad place for anything to go wrong. "2 hours," she said. "I need 2 hours before I bring it to you." "Why 2 hours?" "Because I'm waiting for someone," she said. A pause. "Vincent Blackwood." She said nothing. "Dr. Whitmore," Colton said carefully, "I need you to understand something. When I receive this evidence, my office's mandate requires me to follow it wherever it leads, completely. That means Damian Crosswell and everyone associated with the operation documented in those files." "I understand." "Everyone?" he said again. "I understood you the first time," she said. 2 hours. The hospital." She ended the call. She stood at the edge of the parking lot for 1 more minute. She looked at the sky. Clear now, the clouds that had covered the day gone and the stars there, if you looked for them, which she did, briefly, because her father had known constellations and had taught her the few he could remember, and right now she wanted to think about that instead of anything else. Then she went back to the car. Her phone rang 40 minutes later. She was back on the highway, Maisie asleep again with her head against the door, Diane quiet beside her, when the number she didn't have saved came through and she answered it with both hands still on the wheel. "You left," Vincent said. "Vincent." She exhaled, slowly. "You told me to." "I know." His voice was rougher than it had been. Something in the background. A car, she thought, wind against a phone not being held quite right. "Where are you?" "Heading to the county hospital," she said. "Colton's people are meeting me there in—" She checked the dashboard clock. 70 minutes. "Diane." "She's here." She made the 6 o'clock call. "She delivered the 48 hours. A pause. "And you trust that?" "I trust that she had reasons," Claire said. "I don't trust her completely, but I trust the outcome she said she wanted." A beat. "Are you hurt?" "I've been worse." "That's not an answer." "I'm mobile," he said. "I'm 40 minutes behind you." Another pause. The two men in the house, they're not going to be a problem. She did not ask him to elaborate. She had made a decision, somewhere between the window of her father's study and the edge of this dark highway, about what she needed to know and what she needed to let sit in the space between what had happened and what she was willing to look at directly. Marcus Webb, she said. Is he dealt with? Not yet, Vincent said. He's in New York. When this is over, when Colton has the drive and is moving, Marcus becomes a different kind of problem. Your kind. Yes, he said. My kind. She thought about asking what that meant exactly. She decided she already knew, and that knowing was enough, and that some things existed in the space between what was legal and what was necessary, and her father had understood that space well enough to navigate it for 8 years without asking anyone's permission. 70 minutes, she said. County Hospital. Park in the main lot. I'll be there, he said. He was there in 62. She saw the car pull in from the waiting room window. The same dark sedan from that morning, which felt like a week ago. She watched him get out. He moved carefully, with the particular deliberateness of someone whose body had sent him several invoices he hadn't finished reading yet. In the harsh fluorescent spill of the hospital parking lot, she could see the bruise on his jaw had deepened to something purple-black, and he was favoring his left side slightly, in a way he was working to minimize, but not entirely succeeding. She met him at the door. He looked at her. She looked at him. For a moment, neither of them said anything, because some things required a moment of being seen before they could be said. The key worked, she said. Colton's team confirmed it. They accessed the second folder 20 minutes ago. She paused. My father, the second folder has testimony. Audio recordings. My father recorded himself for 8 years, summarizing each piece of evidence as he found it. What it was, where it came from, what it connected to. She had to stop for a second. Colton's lawyer cried. She called me from the parking lot and she was crying. She said it was the most complete whistleblower record she had ever seen. Vincent looked at her. He recorded himself, Vincent said. He recorded himself, she said. Every step, every connection, in his own voice. She looked at the doors behind her, at the hospital light. Nobody will ever be able to say the evidence was planted or manipulated or misattributed. It's in his voice. 8 years of it. In his voice. Something moved through Vincent's face. She watched it happen, watched the controlled surface of him shift in a way that was not performance and was not calculation, just a man absorbing a thing that was too big to absorb quickly. He never told me, Vincent said. He didn't tell anyone, she said. That was the point. A beat. He trusted you to be the bridge. He trusted the bridge to hold. And then he built the structure itself in a place no one could reach. Vincent looked past her at the parking lot, at the ordinary cars of ordinary people who were inside this hospital for the ordinary reasons that brought people to hospitals. The illness, the births, the endings. He was the best man I knew, Vincent said. His voice was level. But the flatness that had always been in it had a different quality now. Not strategy, not control. The flatness of something that had been said once and would not be repeated. I know, Claire said. She held the door open. He went inside. Ray Colton arrived 45 minutes after that. He was shorter than she'd expected. Compact, 60s, with the particular economy of movement of someone who had spent decades not wasting energy on anything that didn't move a situation forward. He came with 2 lawyers and a woman he introduced as a federal evidence custodian, who took the drive from Claire's hands with gloved hands and a chain of custody form and the focused reverence of someone handling something she understood the weight of. Claire signed the form. She watched the drive leave her hands. The transfer took 11 minutes. Colton's people were efficient in the way that money and preparation made people efficient. When it was done, Colton took Claire aside. A corner of the waiting room, 2 chairs, Maisie asleep across 3 chairs with her jacket over her, and Diane watching her from the doorway. I need to tell you what happens next, Colton said. Tell me. We move on Damien Crosswell within 72 hours, he said. The audio testimony alone establishes probable cause. The financial records provide the evidentiary foundation. The chain of custody is clean. His lawyers will fight it for years, but they cannot win. He looked at her steadily. He will be arrested. His financial network will be frozen. The people named in the documentation, and there are many, will be contacted. Some will cooperate. Some will fight. All of them will know that Richard Whitmore's 8 years of work found its way to the right desk. She nodded. Your father's death, Colton said more carefully. The recording includes a section in which he documents his concerns about his personal safety in the final 3 months. He names the method he believed would be used. He was precise. He paused. We will be referring his death to the medical examiner's office for further review, with a specific toxicological request. I cannot promise you a finding. I can promise you that it will be examined properly. She looked at the floor. Thank you, she said. She said it because it was what the moment required, not because it covered what she felt. What she felt was not something that had a simple word. It was the particular composite of grief and exhaustion and something that was in the neighborhood of relief but was darker than that, the feeling of a thing being finished that should never have had to be started. One more thing, Colton said. He glanced toward the door, where Vincent was standing apart from everyone else with his phone in his hand, and Vincent Blackwood. What about him? He is on record as a cooperative source, Colton said carefully. His information, his contacts, his testimony in this matter, all of that is significant. I intend to honor the significance of it. A pause. My office has a long history with Mr. Blackwood that is complicated. What I am telling you is that, in the matter of Damien Crosswell, his cooperation will be recognized. Beyond that matter, he stopped. Beyond that matter, Claire said, is between you and him. Yes, Colton said. It is. He knows that, she said. He came in anyway. Colton looked at her. Something shifted in his expression, something like reassessment. Your father, he said, documented Mr. Blackwood's role in this investigation in terms that were unexpectedly generous. My father was a thorough man, Anne, she said, and he was fair. Evidently, Colton said. He stood up. He extended his hand. She shook it. Dr. Whitmore, I am sorry for the circumstances. I am not sorry we're having this conversation. Neither am I, she said. He left with his people. The drive went with them in a sealed case. The waiting room was quiet. Diane came to sit across from Claire. She set a coffee cup on the low table between them. From the hospital vending machine, the particular bad coffee of every hospital in America, which Claire had drunk enough of in her life that it barely registered as bad anymore. She picked it up. She drank it. Colton's going to look at you, Claire said. I know, Diane said. My word that you cooperated gets you context. It doesn't get you immunity. I know that too, Diane said. I have a very good lawyer. A beat. Several, actually. Claire looked at her. The composed face, the particular quality of a woman who had lived in gray spaces long enough that she had stopped being troubled by the color. Why did you really call me? Claire said. In the hotel. You said you didn't know what Vincent would do, but you knew him for years. You could have calculated it. Diane looked at her coffee. Because I wanted someone else in the room, she said. Someone who wasn't in the middle of it. Someone who had come to it from the outside and was still... She stopped, seemed to consider the word she wanted. Still clean, she said. I wanted someone clean to hear it. Claire sat with that. My father was clean, she said. I know, Diane said. That's why they killed him. She said it without softness, because there was no version of it that softness made better. Clean people are the most dangerous kind. They don't have anything to negotiate with. The hospital hummed around them. Somewhere down the hall, a machine beeped at intervals. Maisie shifted in her sleep and made a small sound and settled. Vincent came and sat in the chair Colton had used. He set his phone face down on the table. He looked tired. Not the performed tiredness of a long day, but the actual physical tiredness of a man whose body had absorbed several things it would need time to process. Colton talked to you, Claire said. For about 4 minutes, Vincent said. Long enough to establish the parameters. And I'm going to need a different kind of lawyer than I currently have, he said. The dryness in it was almost wry, which surprised her. He was thorough. He's good at his job, Claire said. He is, Vincent said. Your father would have approved of him. She looked at the table, at the bad coffee, at the waiting room of a county hospital at 1 a.m, where her daughter was asleep and the man her father had trusted most was sitting across from her, looking like someone who had just set down something very heavy and wasn't sure what to do with his hands. "What happens to you now?" she said. Vincent looked at the far wall. "That depends on how thorough Colton decides to be." "And Marcus Webb?" "Marcus will be handled," he said. "Not by Colton, by me." He said it without heat, without anything that performed danger. Just a statement. "I'm not going to ask," she said. "I know. I'm also not going to pretend I don't know what you mean." "I know that too," he said. She looked at him. "Is there something left for you?" she said. "When this is all over, when Damien is prosecuted and the money is traced and the investigation closes, is there something on the other side of it?" He was quiet for long enough that she thought he wasn't going to answer. "Your father asked me that once," he said. "A long time ago. I told him I didn't think about it. And now." "And now," he said, and something in his voice was different. Not soft, because Vincent Blackwood did not do soft, but something that had more texture than his usual register, more roughness. "Now I'm sitting in a waiting room in Ohio at 1 in the morning with a cracked rib and a bruised jaw, and I think he would have liked that I'm here instead of somewhere more sensible." A beat. "So maybe that's an answer." She almost smiled. "He would have made you eat something," she said. "He was the kind of person who fed people." "He made me eat terrible things," Vincent said. "He kept buying the low-sodium crackers." "He had blood pressure issues," she said. "I know. He talked about it constantly." Something moved in Vincent's face. Not a smile. He wasn't a man who smiled easily, and she had stopped expecting it. But something adjacent to it, something that lived in the same neighborhood. "He sent me a box of those crackers one Christmas, with a card that said, 'Eat something that isn't going to kill you.'" She laughed. She hadn't expected to, and the sound surprised her, small and genuine and slightly ragged at the edges. She pressed her hand over her mouth. "Sorry," she said. "Don't apologize," he said. She took her hand away. She breathed. "He sent me recipe cards," she said, "for the last 3 years. Handwritten. Things he said my grandmother used to make. I was always going to make them, and I never did." She looked at the table. "I still have them." "Make them," Vincent said. She looked at him. "Make the recipes," he said. "Not for him. Because he wrote them down, which means he wanted you to have them, so use them." She nodded. Once, slowly. Maisie woke up at 2 in the morning in the way children woke, suddenly, completely, without the gradual surfacing that adults needed. She sat up and looked around the waiting room and found her mother and went directly to her, climbing into the chair beside her and leaning against her arm. "Is it over?" Maisie said. "Most of it," Claire said. "The important parts?" "The most important part," Claire said. "Yes." Maisie leaned her head against her mother's shoulder. She looked at Vincent. He looked back at her with the same patient, direct attention he gave to everything. "Grandpa liked you," Maisie said. Vincent was quiet for a moment. "I know," he said. "He talked about you sometimes," she said. "He didn't say your name, but he talked about someone he trusted. He said this person was difficult but honest." She considered this with the gravity of someone reporting an important fact. He said honest was harder to find than people thought. Vincent held her gaze. He said nothing for long enough that it became something. "He was right," Vincent said finally. Maisie seemed satisfied by this. She turned back to her mother's shoulder and closed her eyes again. The first real news broke 4 days later. Claire was in her kitchen in Denton, still on leave from the clinic, when her phone started lighting up. Notifications from news apps, texts from colleagues, a call from Petra that she let go to voicemail because she wasn't ready to explain anything to anyone who hadn't been inside it. She made coffee and stood at her counter and watched the alerts come in with the particular unreality of seeing something you lived through become a public event. Damien Crosswell had been arrested at his Manhattan residence at 6 in the morning. Federal agents. A sealed indictment that had been filed 48 hours earlier under a court order preventing media disclosure until the arrest was complete. The language in the initial reports was careful and procedural, the way these things always started before the full shape became clear. But the shape was becoming clear. By evening, 3 of the names from her father's files had appeared in connection with the arrest. 2 from Damien's financial circle and the city councilman, who released a statement through a lawyer that Claire read once and set her phone down after without finishing it. Petra called again. This time Claire answered. Are you okay? Petra said. Claire, this is connected to your father somehow, isn't it? I can feel it. Tell me you're okay. I'm okay, Claire said. I'll explain when I can. I promise. Not yet. Okay, Petra said. And then, because she was Petra, and 6 years of friendship had calibrated her precisely. Do you need soup? No, Claire said. I'm bringing soup, Petra said. She let her bring the soup. She sat at her kitchen table and ate it while Maisie did homework across from her, and the news played on low in the other room, and the particular feeling of a house after a storm. The way it was quiet, but differently quiet, the way the air felt like it had been washed, settled around them. She called Vincent that night. He answered from somewhere she couldn't identify from the background. I saw the news, he said. Everyone saw the news, she said. How are you? Colton's people came to speak with me today, he said. 3 hours. How did that go? It went, he said. They're thorough. A pause. They're going to be thorough for some time. Are you going to be okay? Define okay, he said. Vincent. I'm going to be fine, he said. It's going to be complicated and it's going to take a long time, but I am going to be fine. He said it without performance, which made it more convincing. Marcus Webb was found in his apartment in New York this morning. Voluntary surrender. He's cooperating with the federal investigation. A beat. Voluntarily. She thought about what voluntary surrender looked like when it came after a conversation with Vincent Blackwood. She thought about it and then put it in the same space where she had put the other things she had decided to let sit. Garrett's daughter, she said. Emma and her aunt are in a new location, he said. Comfortable. Garrett is... He stopped. Garrett is in a complicated position. He did what he did. He also gave us Soto's address, which gave us the operation, which led directly to every outcome that followed. A pause. Colton's people know about Garrett. I told them. You told them. Your father wouldn't have let me protect him just because it was convenient, Vincent said. She was quiet for a moment. No, she said. He wouldn't have. Garrett knows what's coming, Vincent said. He has a lawyer. He has the cooperation fact on his side. His daughter is safe. A beat. It's not nothing. No, she said. It's not nothing. Diane Cross's name did not appear in the first wave of press coverage. It appeared 6 weeks later, buried in a background piece that described her role in the case as that of a cooperative material witness whose information had been instrumental in the timeline of evidence delivery. The piece was short. It noted that she was not facing charges at this time. It did not name the conditions under which she had cooperated. Claire read it. She thought about the parking lot call, about the voice that had said I wanted someone clean to hear it, about the granola bar that Maisie had handed across the seat in the dark. She called Diane. I saw the piece, Diane said. Colton was fair, Claire said. Colton was strategic, Diane said. He needed the cooperation, and cooperation requires something in return. It was a transaction. A pause. But yes. Fair enough. Are you leaving? Claire asked. Eventually, Diane said. There's a place I've been meaning to go for a long time. I kept putting it off because there was always something here that needed managing. A dry sound that might have been a laugh. Turns out most of it didn't need me as much as I thought. Where? Somewhere quiet, Diane said. Somewhere with a decent library. A pause. Your father would have understood that. He would have, Claire said. 3 months after that, the county medical examiner's office issued a supplemental finding in the matter of Richard Whitmore's death. The language was technical and careful, the way official language always was when it was correcting itself. It referenced trace compounds found in a tissue sample taken at the original autopsy and preserved in standard storage, compounds that a targeted toxicological analysis, requested by a federal legal office, had identified as consistent with a substance capable of precipitating acute cardiac events in patients with pre-existing hypertension, undetectable under standard post-mortem screening. The finding concluded, manner of death revised from natural causes to undetermined, pending further investigation. Claire read it 3 times. Then she went to Maisie's school and picked her up early, which she never did, and Maisie came out of the building to find her mother standing at the edge of the pickup area in her coat, and she walked directly to her the way she always walked to things, fast, committed, and let herself be hugged without asking why. They went to get ice cream. It was too cold for ice cream, technically, but they had it anyway, at a table by the window of the one ice cream place in Denton that stayed open through winter. And Maisie talked about something her teacher had said about clouds, and Claire listened to every word, and the afternoon light came through the window at that particular low winter angle and sat on the table between them like something that was just exactly what it was. "Mom," Maisie said. "Yeah." "Was Grandpa brave?" Claire looked at her daughter, the gray-green eyes, the careful face. "Yes," she said. "Did he know he was brave?" She thought about it. She thought about a man who left his name nowhere, who built 8 years of documentation in the silence of a garage and a study, and a series of careful notebooks, who sent recipe cards and low-sodium crackers, and never once asked his daughter to look at the thing he was carrying. "I don't think he thought about it that way," she said. "I think he just did what he thought was necessary." "That's what brave is," Maisie said, with the confidence of someone who had recently decided something. "It's not about not being scared, it's about doing the thing anyway." Claire looked at her daughter for a long moment. "Where did you hear that?" she said. "Grandpa," Maisie said. She looked back at the table, at the ice cream going slightly soft in the winter light. "Yeah," she said, "that sounds like him." The day she went back to her father's house, really back, not running and not leaving in a hurry, it was a Saturday in late February, when the cold was still present but had lost its edge, when the first suggestions of something different were in the air without quite being there yet. She drove alone. Maisie was at her friend's house. The drive was the same highway she had driven 100 times, the flat Ohio landscape she had spent her whole life moving through, and she drove it at a comfortable speed with the radio on low, playing something she didn't pay attention to, and when she reached the town, she did not feel the dread she had been bracing for. She felt something quieter than that. She parked in the driveway. She sat in the car for a moment. She looked at the house, the ordinary face of it, the porch her mother had planted things on every spring, the window of the study where her father had written 30 years of journals in cramped handwriting that had told his daughter, in the end, exactly where to look. She went inside. She went to the garage. She stood in it for a long time, the workbench along the far wall, the pegboard with the tool outlines, each tool still hanging in its traced shape. The particular cold of a space that had not been heated regularly, that had the smell of metal and oil, and the particular staleness of a room where someone had worked and thought. The corner of the lower shelf where the envelope had been was just a corner of a lower shelf. She crouched and touched it, set her hand flat on the shelf's surface. She thought about sitting on this floor 3 months ago, holding a water-stained envelope in both hands, not yet knowing what it meant. She thought about the woman she had been that day. A doctor running a small clinic, a mother, a daughter, in the ordinary middle of the ordinary grief that came for everyone eventually. She had been wearing her hospital clothes, and her knuckles had knocked against something she didn't expect, and everything had changed in the space between one moment and the next. She did not believe the woman she had been that day was gone. She did not believe she had become someone harder or colder or less. She thought, sitting on her father's garage floor, that she had become more completely herself, that whatever had been latent in her, whatever Richard Whitmore had seen and prepared for without ever saying so, had been brought all the way to the surface by everything that had happened, and that it was still hers, still her, just known now in a way it hadn't been before. She reached into the pocket of her coat. She took out the recipe card, the one for her grandmother's pot roast, her father's handwriting on a 4x6 index card, the ingredients listed in his careful block letters with a note at the bottom that said, "Don't rush the onions, they need time." She looked at it for a while. Then she stood up. She turned off the garage light. She walked back into the house and into the kitchen, and she found the cast iron pan that had lived in this kitchen for as long as she could remember, and she started making her grandmother's pot roast for the first time on a Saturday afternoon in February, because her father had written it down, and he had wanted her to have it, and she was done putting things off. Vincent came in April. She hadn't expected it to be April specifically. She had known he would come, in the vague way she had come to know things about him. Not because he said them, but because she had learned to read what he didn't say. He had called twice in the intervening months, brief calls, mostly informational, the way he did everything. The update on Colton's progress, the news about Damien's bail denial, The information that Soto had taken a cooperation deal and was providing testimony that was, according to Colton's office, more than sufficient. He did not say he was coming. He texted the day before, a single message. "I'll be in Denton tomorrow if you have time." She texted back, "Come for dinner." He came at 6. She had made the pot roast again, the third time now, and she had finally gotten the onions right, the way they went translucent and then golden. If you gave them enough time and didn't rush them, the way her father had said. She had made enough for 3 because Maisie was home, and she had told Maisie that her grandfather's friend was coming, and Maisie had received this information as she received most information, with a practical nod and then a question about whether there would be bread. There was bread. Vincent sat at her kitchen table in the house she had built for herself and her daughter, in the town where she ran her clinic, and he ate her grandmother's pot roast without ceremony. And Maisie sat across from him and told him with great seriousness about a project she was doing at school about local history, which led to a conversation Claire had not anticipated, in which Vincent turned out to know a surprising amount about Ohio labor history, which Maisie received as confirmation of something she had already decided about him. After dinner, Maisie went to her room. The kitchen settled into the quiet of a meal finished and dishes waiting. Claire poured 2 cups of coffee. She set one in front of Vincent. She sat down. "Colton called me this week," she said. "I know. He called me too." A pause. The indictment count increased. 41 counts, she said. "My father documented 41 separate criminal acts." "Yes." "He never told you how far it went." "He told me the broad strokes," Vincent said. "The details he kept." He looked at his coffee. "I didn't know about the audio testimony until Colton told me. 3 months of knowing, and I still—" He stopped. "I know," she said. He held the cup in both hands. "There's a hearing in June," he said. "Colton wants me to testify about the context, the 8 years of the investigation, how it was structured, the corroboration of Richard's documentation from my end." He was quiet for a moment. "I'm going to do it." She looked at him. "On the record," he said. "In open court. Everything." She knew what this meant. She knew what it would cost him, not in the immediate legal sense, because Colton's office had given him assurances, but in the larger sense, in the sense of a world he had built over decades that was going to be taken apart and examined in the specific harsh light of federal proceedings. "You don't have to," she said. "I know," he said. "It will—" "I know what it will do," he said. "I've known since the warehouse." He looked at her steadily. "Your father went 8 years building something that told the complete truth. The least I can do is stand up and confirm it." She held her coffee cup. The kitchen was warm. Through Maisie's door she could hear the faint sound of her daughter's voice, practicing something, reading aloud, the particular cadence of a child working through words. "He would have said you didn't owe him anything," Claire said. "He would have been wrong." "He was wrong about some things," Vincent said. "He thought I was a better man than I am." "He thought you were the man you were capable of being," she said. "That's different." The silence that followed was not uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that comes between people who have been through something together and have arrived at the other side of it and are learning what the other side looks like. "There's something I've been wanting to ask you," Claire said. "Ask." "That dinner," she said, 11 years ago, Thanksgiving. You sat at my mother's table and you watched everyone in the room and you barely said a word." She looked at him. "What were you thinking?" He looked at her for a long moment. "I was thinking," he said, "that Richard had built something real, something I had lost access to." He paused. "I was thinking that I should leave quickly before I did anything to damage it." She looked at him. "You came back," she said. "I was asked," he said. "You could have said no," she said. "There are things you've said no to." He looked at his coffee. "Your father asked me," he said, "and Richard Whitmore didn't ask for things lightly. He had been careful his whole life about what he asked of people." A pause. "When he asked, it meant something." She nodded. She stood up and went to the window. The April evening outside was doing what April evenings did in Ohio. Not quite warm, not quite cold, the light lingering in a way that winter didn't permit, the trees doing the early tentative work of coming back. She looked at the street, at the Hendersons' minivan, parked slightly crooked the way it always was, at the maple with the broken ice storm branch, which someone had finally cut back. He's not going to come back, she said. I know that. But he left. He left a lot behind. More than I thought. She paused. I've been making his recipes. I've been reading the journals. Not the coded ones. The regular ones. The ones he kept before all of this started. He was funny. I didn't know he was funny. He wrote things in those journals that made me laugh. She pressed her hand against the window glass. I feel like I'm meeting him again. Someone I knew and didn't know. She heard Vincent set his cup down behind her. She heard his chair. He talked about you, Vincent said. More than you know, every time we met. He came to stand a few feet behind her, close enough that his reflection was at the edge of the window glass. He worried about whether you were happy, whether the clinic was what you actually wanted or just what you'd settled into. He worried about the divorce, not that it happened, but whether you had good people around you afterward. A pause. He said you were the bravest person he knew and that he had never told you. She kept her hand on the glass. He should have told me, she said. Yes, Vincent said. He should have. She turned around. Vincent was looking at her with the same directness he had always used, but it had something different in it now. A quality she had first seen briefly in her kitchen 4 months ago and had seen more clearly since. Something that had been revealed gradually by everything they had been through, the way cold strips a landscape back to what is actually there. You're not going to disappear, she said. It was not a question. No, he said, even though this is over. Your father's note said find him and make sure they were safe, Vincent said. The finding happened. The safe part, he stopped. The safe part is something I intend to continue. She looked at him for a long moment. You're going to have to learn to eat something besides crackers if you're going to keep coming to dinner, she said. The pot roast was good, he said. It was, she said. I finally got the onions right. The kitchen was quiet around them. Through the wall, Maisie's voice, still reading, still working through words, the small, steady sound of a child growing in a house where she was safe. Claire looked at the man her father had trusted with his most important secret and found, on the other side of everything it had cost all of them, something she had not expected to find there, a person she recognized. Not because she knew him yet, not fully, but because she had seen the shape of who he was in the worst of it, and the shape held, and that was more than she could say for a lot of people who had shown her their best face first. She went to the stove. She lifted the lid of the pot. She looked at what was left. There's enough for lunch tomorrow, she said. If you're still here. A pause. I have a call in the morning, he said. Colton's office. 7 a.m. I have rounds at 8, she said. The clinic is 4 minutes from here. She kept her back to him. She put the lid back on the pot. The couch is comfortable, she said. Maisie will want to tell you about the history project at breakfast. She's been working on it for 3 weeks and she's looking for someone new to tell about it. She heard him breathe, heard him shift his weight, heard the particular sound of a man deciding. What's the project about? He said. The people who built things in this county, she said, without getting credit for it. She turned around. She came up with the topic herself. She looked at him, and he looked at her. And between them was everything that had happened and everything it had cost, and the kitchen that smelled like her grandmother's pot roast, and through the wall, her daughter's voice, still reading, not stopping. Richard Whitmore had known what he was doing when he hid that envelope. He had known exactly what he was leaving behind for his daughter to find. Not just the evidence, not just the fight, but the person who would be there when the fight was over, standing in her kitchen in April with the bruise on his jaw finally faded and the torn coat replaced, looking like someone who had arrived somewhere he hadn't expected to arrive and was trying to determine if he was allowed to stay. He was allowed to stay. She had decided that somewhere along the way, maybe in the alley behind her father's house, maybe in the hospital waiting room, maybe on the garage floor in February with a recipe card in her hand, and she was not going back on it. Breakfast is at 7, she said. I'll make eggs. She went to start the dishes, and Vincent Blackwood, the most feared man on the East Coast, who had sat at her mother's dinner table 11 years ago and thought about leaving before he damaged anything real, pulled out the chair at her kitchen table and sat back down in it, and the sound of it was the quietest thing that had happened in this house in months. Outside, the April evening finished its slow work of gathering dark. Inside, a light